2141, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. 142. The mysteries of thaumaturgy, a gradual progression in intellectual terms, reaching its peak in Homo sapiens. But in this human species there always exists a hierarchical link that intellectually binds men to all the races. There are some men who are barely more intelligent than the most intelligent dog, as there are others who border on pure evolved spirits, no longer alive to human life. Those who want to understand the language of the gods must penetrate the language of primitive syntheses, passing beyond the abyss of human languages. The sacred Kabbalah, the secret philosophy of the Absolute, has the power of making the synthetic language of divine ideas eternal. Before the scientific processes of common knowledge, it is the torch that recalls civilization sealed with the priestly knowledge of things. The Kabbalah is the philosophy of absolute laws and of the immutable elements of physical, intelligent, and mental nature, of nature in its concrete expression. The numerical Kabbalah, or occult Pythagorean tradition, owing to the substitution of numbers for words, is even more difficult to grasp without the help of a fluent master. The Arabs had and have angels with 2 or more eyes. The bodily eyes represent their humanization, while the extra eyes refer to their divinity. So, with our human eyes we can see the physical sun, and with the mental eyes the sun of the archetypal world. I say it clearly, the master starts talking only when the concave and convex, as the old rabbis said, of the celestial world shine with incandescence to the vision of the mental eye. To study the Kabbalah without the will to understand the syntheses is a waste of time. Moses received the 50 doors of divine intelligence as a gift from Jehovah, the God whose name consists of 4 symbolic letters, and Moses handed them down to us. In order to understand well how this legacy has feathered our nest, we must remember that the word Moses has different meanings, some of which are occult, incommunicable, and others of which are manifest. One of the most widely known is that Hermetic science of transformation. In 142, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. 143. Moses means attracted to God or saved from the waters. From what waters? Those of the Nile. Or might not the Nile and its waters rather be the astral river, which floods the profane and fleshly Egypt of the pharaohs, the kings of matter? The mental eye must go further and deeper than the human eye when scrutinizing books and sacred truths. The synthetic, ideological, Kabbalistic language is imprecise in that it may lend itself to interpretations, which at times may be false and profane, at times divine. A deep knowledge of the Kabbalah clarifies the perception of the concrete order of immutable nature. The intellectual light allows us a deep perception of all the manifestations imperceptible to the profane eye. Nature, matter, spirit, the visible, and the invisible are but one. The unity is God. All fatal events are God's will. Life, death, pain, joy are forms and moments of the universal psychic life. Jehovah is the ego sum ki sum, I am that I am, and all truths are in him, the Samoth of the Kabbalists, mystical science, and Saphizath, numerical science in him and for him all the manifestations of living and intelligent nature. The prophecy is only in this. High magic is in the interpretation of the whole of nature as the language of the only and immutable Almighty. Clairvoyance is the synthesis of the impression of universal nature. So-called superstitions are but the language of the invisible but inferior life. Dreams represent a life and a great truth only for those who can analogically read their real and deep significance. A word is the materialization of an idea. It is the act generated by the idea. The men who study philology in ordinary schools are not competent in the magnetic and magic technique of the word. Pythagorean silence was deemed appropriate for cancelling the impurities attached to the phonic or graphic signs of human thought or of the absolute world of everlasting truths. Soul, life, and thought are words, sounds, and signs, they are effects and works, they are calculations and monuments, they are sensations and they are nothingness. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 143, the 7th of September 2019, 9:40 a.m. 144. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. Sensations may and may not be effective in determining the truth of what exists. The two factors should be memory and will. Consciousness is but the persistent feeling resulting from the whole working of the three factors: sensibility, persistent memory, irrefutable evidence, consciousness. Will. Sensibility is misleading, memory may be equally misleading, will may be dominated by a will of greater dynamism. Consequently, the evidence of truth must come from a sense that is subtler, deeper, higher than simple animal or sensory consciousness. Consciousness is a sensation to the extent that it is the result of complex and separate actions of things upon the human body, the animal nature of man balanced according to Zoosophical theory, cannot have consciousness beyond the feeling of memories and of completed actions that took place. But the psychically advanced man has a second consciousness, which is not the result of physical actions, and which contains a certain inexpressible, a luminous sense, which detaches and separates the two arrows resulting from the equation of the free individualized power of the ether of Hippocrates' ether and of the external current. I will clarify with an example. Being thirsty, take a bottle of good wine. Drink it. As the wine is introduced to the stomach, you become increasingly drunk. Then you are conscious of the action of the wine on your brain. Until you are completely drunk, you have the exact awareness of lightheadedness influencing your actions. This deep feeling, which puts you above the physical effects of the action of the wine, was presented by some philosophical sects as the dynamic, intelligent duplicate of soul consciousness. Here it is in graphic form. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 144, the 7th of September 2019, 9:40 a.m. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. 145. Wine, its action: lightheadedness, drunkenness, delirium, the intellectual sense judging the abnormal state, animal consciousness, material soul, intellective consciousness, intelligent soul. But that is not enough. Over and above this supersensitive consciousness there is the judging principle, the inner self, the free and rational soul principle, judging both kinds of consciousness. To those who asked me one day why occultists did not express their ideas clearly, that the reason why must be sought in the very imperfect nature of the disciples, in whom the involutional act represented by original sin, of which Catholic baptism is meant to purify them, leads all creatures to the complete and concrete materialization of the most sublime ideas and the highest conceptions, which are neither human nor humanizable, otherwise they would be finite and would belong to hell or the netherworld of error. The Kabbalah of the rabbis is the immaculate conception outside any blemish of human prevarication. Words are expressions and misrepresentations of conceived ideas. To speak means to make material. To speak is to dissolve. To listen to speech is to deviate if one does not go beyond the words spoken, and does not grasp the ideas behind them. The great mystery lies in the silence of the senses to allow the evolution or purification of the embodied spirit. Remember, my disciple, that human doctrines, I mean those which do not have their foundation in the purification of the human spirit and its evolution toward the recovery of its earliest freedom, were called diabolic, satanic, infernal, just because they tried to set up an altar in opposition to Hermetic science of transformation. Ind 145 the 7th of September 2019 9:40 a.m. 146 The mysteries of thaumaturgy, the evolution of the spirit. The attempt to conquer the heavens, violating them by making sublime ideas concrete, is titanic, but the titans are the spirits most deeply embedded in the mud, who tend to mix any abstract and pure idea with the mud, thus making the mud sublime. The dogma of the omnipotence of the God-being, tetragrammaton, contains the union of two active elements acting upon the same passive element. But if the universe or macrocosm contains this absolute power, the microcosm or man, God-man, contains, by analogy, the same elements. The modern world cannot explain why learned men for so many centuries have been very interested in the definitions of the fundamental ideas of religion. It is because this contemporary world of ours cannot grasp the positiveness of wise theological dissertations, and the meaning of the abstract formulae on which the apparently verbose discussions were based. All the silliest and most abstruse provisions in the eyes of the moderns, who do not try to penetrate the fundamentals of religious motivations, all concealed a strong tendency toward realization, from the mains to the Catholic heresies of recent centuries. The heresiarchs, but those who really deserved the name, all had in the bottom of their brains a special idea for the manifestation and disintegration of truth. The first centuries of Christian Rome, when nascent Christianity found itself in doctrinal conflict with all the philosophical systems of pagan Latinity, saw the fervent struggle between the philosophical systems, because, at that time, even the revealed doctrine of the Neo-Christians was conceived as a system of philosophical doctrines. The different ways of conceiving and of defining the creative unity and its manifestations gave birth to three main streams of applied wisdom: 1. The aim of life and how to achieve it. 2. Morality and social trends. 3. Reason, history, and political realization. Yod, Het, Vor, Het, Jehovah Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 146 the 7th of September 2019 9:40 a.m. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. 147 From the concrete ideal of the human mind, acting as a reflector of universal power, a different moral tendency is projected on social surroundings, and when modern philosophers come and enlarge upon the 18th century idea of the non-existence of absolute morality, they show that the work of great religions from Buddhism to Christianity has passed before their eyes as a fleeting image, because they have not understood that the social factor, which prepares the way for the great revolutions and the great historical ideas, is the religious ideal, which gives birth to the morality and well-being of the people. Please notice that now I am speaking to those readers who are deeply interested in social sciences, showing them, without any bigotry and above all religions, a new standpoint from which to look at and understand the beneficial influence of all religious activity for all modern civilized peoples, and I think I would be straying from the path if I tried to widen the discussion of the subject. I here must only remind the reader that magic, the perfect science, must not be understood only as the manifestation of the occult powers of a man on other men or things, but of the human mind as the manifestation of divine harmony over the whole historical milieu in the course of long epochs. The ordinary life of a man, much shorter than a century, does not prove anything in the practical reality of life. Jesus of Nazareth was only able, in his life, if the symbolism of his story is truthful, to be tormented. But out of his torments, from the cross on which he was nailed, through the consummatumist, he worked the greatest act of divine science can be entrusted only to pure men, that is, men who have no personal interest and are consequently free from needs and ambitions. To follow the road of the secret science of the magicians through a disinterestedness that is only apparent is sorcerer's work. Egotism is the benchmark. Egotism is the touchstone of all initiates. The theocratic governments of ancient times were not based on religious industry, as the young are ordinarily led to believe, but they marked the guidance of peoples by enlightened men acting out of disinterestedness. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 147, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. 148. The Mysteries of Thaumaturgy. Social Magic. He prepared the way for new times. He set in motion the idea of equilibrium, which 20 centuries later is not yet completely realized and alive. But if the Master had lived in his human form for 20 centuries, and if the human memory were strong enough to embrace in one wonderful picture all the work done, we could exclaim as Napoleon did at the pyramids that 40 centuries will look with admiration upon the glorious work of the most glorious of the ideal masters, and the human magic of a sectarian and of a Hebrew sect becomes through religion and philosophy, wisdom, progress, light, and social perfection. Take the head of a man, break it open, describe the organs it contains. If it is in the bleeding brain that you look for the man, if it is in its weight that you want to find the idea, then you are compelled to draw two great consequences: the absolute materiality of life, and the sensualist orgy as the only social aim. One draws the obvious moral. From this, the great errors of satanic rites in those who, even in simply studying theology, overturn it for a determined purpose and for the achievement of immediate success. In magic only the pure or impure conception defines the application and the tendency of the rites, which may be great, on account of their ideality or their foulness. The same is true for religion and politics. I said that to the head of man or upper vertex of the magical pentagon, which Eliphaz Levi rightly advises us never to trace because it is never traced with impunity, correspond the signs of magisterial or divine plus. But if we want to philosophize on microcosmic omnipotence, this principle of the binary residing in the human mind or embodied spirit, we must place the two signs differently. Plus Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 148, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. The Mysteries of Thaumaturgy. 149. The upper lunar crescent waxing positive in ideality, and the lower waning and passive. In the positive you have the key of Isis or Immaculate Conception. In the passive, you have the formula of the corruption of Purity or Persephone. The intelligence is between the two factors. Human free will lies exactly in this choice, but in working magic, once the choice has been made, one must face the consequences. God is one. In Psalm 138 the Latin Vulgate line 8 is, Si adscendro in caelum, tu illices, si descendro ad infernum ads. If I ascend into heaven you will be there, if I descend into hell, you will be there. That too refers to Dominus qui intelligit cogitations et conoscit sensations, he who understands thoughts and experiences sensations. Therefore the Dominus is above and below. Here I beg my reader not to put his foot in it and to reflect well on what I am saying, because those who can grasp the real meaning of my words will achieve the result of coming face to face with the truth, as Jacob fought in close combat with the mystic angel, and was lamed in one leg. Since the truth, that so many sacred symbols and so many evocative formulae veil, that so many sublime or nefarious acts symbolize or search for, is not the word that manifests the secret name of God, but the attempt to hand it down without pronouncing it, that is, without violating it, to posterity, so that those who merit it may learn it. This unity God cannot be clearly understood by the public who study the secret ab Allah without blasphemy. God is the devil. But to formulate the law in this way is absurd, because it would be a negation of the binary. Ask a professor of theology if God in the home of the devil is or is not God. Those who do not understand the question should not reflect too much on these words, or they might stay in infernum without finding God there. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 149, the 7th of September 2019, 9:40 a.m. 150. The mysteries of thaumaturgy, and hear it repeated in their ears as the greatest conquest of absolute wisdom. The reverberations of this truth are prismatic. There is a wave of 7 colors of truth, which men grasp and admire, according to greater or lesser perfection of their spirits. The whole luminous spectrum is the truth of the great masters. Only one of the colors is the more or less miraculous power of the aspirants to the final adeptship. The moment of final conquest, when the master is formed, is a moment of rebirth. From the caterpillar bursts forth the mystical butterfly of Dante Alighieri, and then, prostrate before the blinding truth, one looks on the ocean of human impurities as from a flying balloon, on the blackness of the tarry bog of the ancient visionaries. The kingdom of beatitude of Buddha and the Assumption of Mary in Catholic doctrine are identical as states of perfectibility desired by initiates. To penetrate the limbo of higher purity and is the way to get there, to fall into the is the magic of involutional forms. The clairvoyance in all fields and the high perfection of the highest embodied priests belong to the former. All the illusions of the astral zone, all the imperfections and the volubility of the current of the involutional souls belong to the latter. Behind this double aspect of the efforts of the initiates to reach the state of conquest, the terrible secret of the life and death of human souls is hidden. Io Parlopavidaya, and do not think that the author of the Divine Comedy was trying his hand at philosophy and history without inspira*. To this end, the first part must be read and reread. The secret of the incommunicable word can be given by a master who knows it, or stolen from him by one who is close to him and avoids being dismissed when the master perceives the danger of his devotion. We must not forget that the disciple is the true sponge of the master only when the disciple succeeds, and that, vice versa, he is absorbed by the master when he becomes an insignificant number in his chain. Arnon used to say to his disciple, in order to succeed in magic it is not enough to find a master. It is necessary not to lose him and not to let him go. The reader should not take this as a misprint. I do say, the life and death of human souls. I speak to tell the truth. Trans. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 150, the 7th of September 2019, 9:40 a.m. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. 151 Shan and a clear vision of the truth. The man who is beyond sensism is faced with the choice, Christ or Satan. In common doctrines, Christ represents the world of the perfection of souls, whereas Satan represents all that is of matter and the senses. In Sila Milices in Infernum adds, Psalm 138, do not understand, if you have any respect for intellect, as the false Gnostics of the early centuries did, that above and below are one and that all is duality. Do not understand that the psalmist confused omnipotence with the transformation of the divine personage into the king of hell in the infernal spheres, but reflect upon the fact that Pythagoras called man both unity and multiplicity, and the origin, or God, he called one. In Catholic symbolism, the Virgin Mary represents the Immaculate Conception above the active zone of pagan intellectuality, Minerva, and, with the waning moon of which I spoke above under her feet, she is free from any terrestrial effluvium. Passively religious men aspire to this state of purification. The litanies of the Madonna must be read and studied in every appellation, from which one can infer the scale of all the qualities attributed to purity. This symbolism of the Immaculate Conception goes back many centuries before Christ. The veiled Isis of Egypt and the female or lunar divinities of the Assyrian and Babylonian monarchies are proof of this. It is the highest cult from the philosophical and magical point of view. But this cult lends itself to decay in sacrilegious ceremonies as soon as the stainless purity of this sublime ideal of mental exaltation is stained with quite material acts of coercion and imprecations. In this case, not infrequently, the purest ideality becomes confused with spiritual decadence of the effigies magnetized and enchanted to produce certain effects. So each image corresponds to a title, and each title corresponds to the desire for a favor or a satisfaction of personal needs. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 151, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. 152. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. I have gone on at some length about the symbolism of Mary and the Christian conception to make those who call themselves strong spirits understand well that in supreme theosophy Mary and the conception are but states of mental light, the same as the mystical rose of the Rosicrucians. The truth, which places at its feet all the mutability influencing the terrestrial world, the moon, is surrounded by 12 stars. They are the astral appearances, which never change, and yet which shine with the same light and the same intensity around the smiling head of wisdom. But the cult of statues and images and the visions such as those of Lourdes and of the other Madonnas is inferior to the pure and highest symbolism of the Mater Dei. The many who had visions of the Madonna do not rise above the astral visions where the spirit of humanity speaks through symbols to the intelligence of the visionary. On the other hand, not all can apprehend the purest among the virgins in the ideal field, and the images, statues, paintings are real evocations of the ideal. Let every sufferer turn to her and he will receive comfort, the sick man will be blessed and healed. If he who prays is not capable of raising himself to the highest of the purest heights, let him evoke and invoke his astral image, in Magus, and even the shadow of that light is a light that consoles. Here is the month of flowers. The mystical rose is on the cross of universal equilibrium, in the name of which the Master sends a greeting to the brothers scattered in the universe and waiting for the new sun. In Sorcerer's Rites Astarte, like Persephone in the Orphic rites, instead of keeping the moon at her feet lets the horns of the moon emerge from her hair. The moon with the horns upward stands on her head. A sinuous body like that of a serpent, monstrous in her lust, enchanting in her form, is the Parthenopean siren of the ancient seafarers. The siren enticingly enchants those who travel in search of the truth. How will you conquer her, if your heart trembles and your flesh creeps at her voluptuous song? Ulysses says, "Stop your ears with wax," but Ulysses's story is famous, and I do not have to repeat it or comment. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 152, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. 153 on it here. The master who takes his disciple on board on the voyage to the conquest of truth must test him and throws him onto the shore where the siren lies in wait for lovers and victims. He gives in to her, too bad for him. He saves himself, good for him. To sum up, every kind of thaumaturgy has its foundation in light. Light par excellence is either God or the devil. If my reader has clearly understood the line from Psalm 138 quoted above, before feeling puffed up with wisdom based on arguments, he must first learn to ask a child with the eyes of an old man if he should turn for light to the lamplighter on high or to the one from the unknown hell of the living. But, and above all, he must not start from the preconceived ideas, which the pretensions and profane education of so many centuries have been forcing into the psyche of contemporary races. The fiat lux is known in theory. Algebraically everybody thinks that an almighty spirit may have created light, but if you reflect on the first problems of occult philosophy, which I had the honor of explaining to my disciple at the beginning of the first part of Il Mondo Secreto, the frightful dilemma of discovering the God living within yourself is not an unorthodox task, since all Christian churches teach the faithful that man is made in the image of God. If, Before the creation, God had an active creative power. Then after the creation, that is, once he is embodied and individualized in man, he must preserve the capability of his essential creative potential. My reader, open wide the ears of your spirit and the eyes of your mind, because if you fail to grasp the aphoristic meaning of this first arcanum that I am laying out before you, you will speculate in vain on the virtue of communicating the understanding of the accomplished miracle to yourself. The sectarians of the first Christian centuries said that the double God, emanator of true and living light, was light and serpent. The Ophites believed in the serpent, as San Alfonso Maria de Ligri teaches, and those who came after them laughed only at those wise men and their symbology among all the dangerous sectarians and Hermetic science of transformation. In 153, the 7th of September 2019, 9:40 a.m. 154, the mysteries of thaumaturgy are evolutionaries of the incubation period of primitive Christianity. Theodoret, in his long diatribes against the Pythagoreans, by means of popular eloquence, made certain suggestions that the Gentiles and those who lived before the introduction of Essenism to Europe never meant to symbolize occult mysteries of secret spiritual nature in divinized persons. The ancient world, as regards matters of spiritual sciences, was far more advanced than 18th-century controversies or the polemical discussions of the end of this century, and the only point, which historically divides the periods, is the vulgarization of the number, that is to say the widening of the first and limited circle of wisdom considered as high priestly manifestation. Magic must absorb all the exteriority of eternal religion, of which Buddhism, Brahmanism, Egypto-Chaldeanism, paganism, and Christianity are only glimpses of the truth in the vastness of time. Magic is the science. The times are the morality. Morality, the key to the science of religious forms, lies in customs. Mors sunt tempora, the famous tempora or mors is a one-way expression. The spiritual degree, with its great influence upon human society, dictates the upward progress of human society. The outer face of the gods is popular or profane, that is, it is the imitation or the example of past ages. But did the actions of profane people accord with the secret face of these gods? Does Janus, the god with two faces, teach nothing to the would-be philosophers of ancient mythologies? I advise the study of mythology in its essence, as you may find in it the initiation of the powers of our organism. It is the search for a rare science, the possibility of unveiling an arcanum of integration. The initiate to the magic of the priesthood must not consider the simple outer image of divinities, he must penetrate their occult aspects, because if you do not know the secret face of God you are deluded in thinking yourself a philosopher learned in orthodox and hieratical sciences. To ask the master for a book in which miracles are taught in the Hermetic science of transformation. In 154, the 7th of September 2019, 9:40 a.m. the mysteries of thaumaturgy. 155 Same way as card games is a cowardly lie of the vulgar spirit. You must ask for and obtain light before the master speaks, otherwise his words are like pearls cast before swine. If you want to take away the last veil between you and occult truth you may evoke either of these two forms, the objective, the reflection or spectre, or the subjective, the fire or matrix. The first of these ways is easier and longer. Religious orders confirm this. A slow and meditative reading of the Imitation by Thomas A. Kempis or the methodical regimen of a religious order, perhaps from the Far East, prepares you for the evocation of the living Christ. The active magical orders prepare you for the second way. Creative fire, outside of all created things, of all personalities and personifications, represents the dilemma of the victory or annihilation of the active and enquiring spirit. The incredible bravery of the evocations of pyromagic cannot be appreciated even as the invention of a novelist. But after your conquest, the last veil falls from your eyes and you understand the Master. Here begins the thaumaturgic work of the adept. Without first making a bold attempt to destroy yourself atom by atom in order to see the face of the one whose real face, it is written, no one ever saw, whose voice was heard only by the one saved from the waters, and whom Christ called Father, you must not try to perform miracles. Those who want to start by performing miracles in order to then make up their minds act like madmen in the science of secret truth, which is magic. The first aspect of God's ray, Kabbalistically known by the name of Ariel, is the thaumaturgic power or capacity to perform miracles, which miracles are not, as profane and ignorant men think, breaches of the laws of nature, neither are they, as pseudo-scientists of the normality of events would have us believe, due in great part to the ignorance of the believers. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 155 the 7th of September 2019 9:40 a.m. 156 The mysteries of thaumaturgy. Secret sciences maintain that miracles are real and evident acts of creation through the same creative laws by which Jehovah performed the great miracle of the creation of the universe. The laws and conceptions of the miracle are the basis of the second sense of the Kabbalah, and the intelligence of Theosophy is represented by the quinary of which we have spoken. Ariel is an angel, that is, he is the form of the force expressed by divine intelligence. Therefore he is force and he is intelligence. He is instinctively strong and intelligent. He is capable. In profane mysticism, all that comes from material life of things, all that includes the double act of value and deliberative capacity, is Ariel, who is the evocation or manifestation of Jehovah's face. In the life of matter there is very slow motion, in the life of thought there is rapid rotary motion. We must distinguish and divide intellectuality from materialization. Therefore, in the practice of magic, the names of divine entities must be understood and comprehended as having a threefold application: 1. Intelligence or projection of central divine will. 2. Spirit or manifestation of tendency. 3. Genius or daemon in their real manifestation. Each of these forms has a different phenomenal manifestation. In the first, the phenomenon is mental, in the second it is astral, in the third it is material. That is, it belongs to the world visible to ordinary people. Ariel in divine magic is the absolute intelligence of the divine creative force. Intelligence means comprehension, penetration, subtle intuition of the value of the power of creation. In its second phase of adaptation it is a spirit or an angel acting on the astral current. In its third appearance, it is the act of materialized force, that is, the incarnation of intelligence. Before we go further, it is necessary for the disciple to understand Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 156 the 7th of September 2019 9:40 a.m. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. 157 This difference practically, otherwise he cannot exactly understand magic, the science of the most perfect. On the contrary, owing to the rapid and misleading effects of an imprecise interpretation that, to him, thinking wrongly about magical things, offers certain things like experimental spiritualism and psychical studies that tend to form a body of abstract, incomplete, and misleading doctrines that will falsely appear to be very deep and more concrete because they start from sensation and physical objectivity, with the ultimate result that they go back to the source of sensation itself. To study magic and apply theurgy does not mean to study the phenomena perceptible to the physical senses, but to study the occult laws and produce visible phenomena, and, like all sciences, magic must be studied attentively first in its doctrinal part and then in its application. However, before learning anything that has to do with the science, one must understand the sense of the words that one uses. The words angel, demon, and spirit do not have the same meaning from a scientific point of view as the public has given them, and a student of modern science well up in the research in operating theaters and bacteriological laboratories, basing himself on his scientific background, finds the three words contemptible, as they express laughable concepts. Perhaps I will be the last as well as the first to rehabilitate the ancient classical logology of occult science to create the link between ancient and modern forms of human knowledge aiming at the apotheosis of divine synthetic wisdom, but in the future those who come after me will only represent my complete transformation into modernity, and the world will welcome as very modern discoveries things that belong to the ancient knowledge of the priesthood of the one science. Now, it would seem extremely odd and strange for a professor of chemistry in a modern university to invoke in front of his disbelieving students, before trying an experiment, the angel of transformation of Mercury or the demon of mutation of the moon. In spite of all this, the titanic castle of wise mankind will keep rising layer by layer and by superimposing theories, as well as by insufflations of so-called scientific ideas in order Hermetic science of transformation. Ind 157 the 7th of September, 2019 9:40 am 158 The mysteries of thaumaturgy to graft, over many generations, the germ of novelty in the consciousness of true things of the visible world. One day will come, and it is not very far away, when people will understand what human life is, and then, whatever socialists and humanists of our time may say, the discoverers of this great truth, which is the secret of the tree of good and evil, will understand that their only means of salvation is to set themselves up as a scientific theocracy. The two discoveries of this dying century, X-rays and wireless communication, although wonderful, are insignificant as compared with the scientific solution of the problem of human life. The highest initiation gives this secret to the adepts, but how many ever get so far? My present task is to gather the select few together. The seeds of this science will find in them the fruitful earth to make them masters for coming generations, that is, to sow in them the seed of eternal truth above all artifice of arrogant human science. I am speaking to them so that they may understand before practicing, so that they may not practice empirically like charlatans, to stumble while they think they are studying magic into the blind alley of popular spiritualism or mesmeric somnambulism, foundations for doctrines without beginning or end. Magic cannot be practiced like a profession learned by human will, it is the practice of active virtues. It cannot and does not exist for those who practice it according to the blind and incoherent theory of well-known practices. Those who do magic with this sad and imperfect habit of producing immediate phenomena practice the crudest kind of spiritualism, but those who want to produce magical effects without the knowledge of what they are doing sow in the sand, and dreadful catastrophes result from their madness. This madness does not only result in the death of the physical body, as they may think, it often results in the second death, that is, the complete annihilation of their psychical entity. This is the warning before which any imprudent work must stop. In order to understand before practicing, one must fully realize all the theories, analogies, and words used in the great art, or ars magna, the explication of the highest divine science. Hermetic science of transformation. Ind 158 the 7th of September, 2019 9:40 am The mysteries of thaumaturgy 159 Everything in practical magic is achieved through love. Love is divine intelligence, that is, a state of understanding. It is the intuition of the divine embrace between finite matter and the infinite world. Each evocation or invocation is an effort of understanding. If this effort is directed toward inferior aims, that is, toward finite bodies having a determined evolutive life, it represents the involution of one's own being into nether life, hell, diabolism, witchcraft. If, on the contrary, it tends toward God, that is, toward the Supreme Infinite Almighty. It represents evolution, paradise, divine magic. The operator can use the same name either to evoke or invoke. The key to every practice is the Immaculate Conception. As you think, so you evoke; as you conceive, so you create. But the magical act of conception cannot be understood as the result of meditation and lengthy vigils. In magic, conception is a lightning flash, a dazzling operation of our psyche, which relies on two factors: 1. The most perfect education of the physical and intellectual bodies. 2. The will of good and evil. To summarize, I would add that only in an integrated consciousness, outside of any influence of the environment, of superstition or of passion, does the volitional power manifest itself spontaneously without effort, by the simple imaginative act, that the imagination is an instrument of creation in integrated consciousnesses, that the creation of a form conceived in this inner condition is sufficient for the form to be realized, that such achievement is not the result of an effort, but of a state of the independent inner being that knows no obstacle. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 159, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. 160. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. That the realization, above as below, is an act of love, that this holds both in good and in evil, that is, it occurs both in forms or realities which bring about usefulness and pleasure and in those which bring harm and pain. Man has great responsibility for his actions in the society in which he lives. He is rewarded or punished by human justice. But the well-known judgment seat of God of which Catholics speak really does exist, because every action of the conscience of a living being is cause for life or death, and the incorruptible justice of the equilibrium of divine providence rewards or punishes, gives or takes away, in the lives that follow human life, just as in the society of men. Sins, that is, one's faults, must be brought to account and debts paid. The thief must pay back the man he robbed. Qui gladio ferit, gladio perit. Christ's chalice must be drunk to the dregs. That is how we must understand the eye for an eye of holy books. Pardon is expiation. The law of fate is inexorable. Jehovah, who is the just, Almighty God, is also the God of fate, inexorable. As you sow, so shall you reap. If you paint in black, black will be the spectre of justice to you. So Essenism, a mixture of Jewish, Chaldean, and Egyptian science, transfused into Catholicism, could not define pardon without invoking the sacrament of penitence. Penitence is expiation, the purification, the washing away of ancient sins. Man creates his happiness and his unhappiness. Karma is the fruit of all our actions, inexorable, inviolable law. To it all men are subject. The elimination of karma in Buddhism is reached through fasting and abstinence, in Christianity through purification that works toward its elimination by means of magical self-creation. Karma is our work, our merit or demerit, because unswerving just *, he who lives by the sword, must die by the sword. Trans. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 160, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. 161. Tis reigns immutably over all the animate and inanimate world. Every good or bad action must bear fruit. No grace of a personal God can exonerate the malefactor from the consequences of his crime. Karma is not a force that works from outside like a god, but an inner force that works continually on us. To deny this would be to deny the cause of the law that produces the effect. But in magic, to admit this would be to deny the creative action of human thought in a man who has reached the state of pure mag upon an impure man. If every action is a creation, a form, a different arrangement of molecules of things existing by themselves, A pure spirit can purge an unclean spirit through a creative action, destroying his karma and dissipating his larvae. Through an action of sincere and penetrative love, karma is changed by the force of penetration. Hence the need in magic for self-cleansing, which any disciple must achieve, for the purification of his spirit. Remember, disciple, that if, in the ordinary life of man, every action, every word or sigh has a reaction in the hyperphysical world, in the magical life of the initiates even a fleeting thought is a creation. That is why initiation is granted in its fullness only to men of the highest morality, because the danger of prevarication is thus reduced. The responsibility of man before the unseen of his organic life is great, but the responsibility of the initiates is still greater. The masters are jointly responsible with the disciples, when the disciples go wrong, and they are responsible for the bad deeds of the disciples if their punishment of the disciples does not fall upon them like a scourge foreboding Jehovah's inexorability. In magic, the disciple and his master are jointly responsible partners in a contract, as a lawyer might say, and the responsibility of the master is great when he initiates to the high secrets a profane man who may unconsciously violate or prevaricate his mission. Also, direct initiation is always something painful, which the masters avoid. Christ's pardoning of the flagellant is a very great and glorious Hermetic science of transformation. In 161 the 7th of September, 2019 9:40 AM 162 The mysteries of thaumaturgy, work of charity, when the offending act does not generate any revenge for the offense in the offended, divine justice is more clement. But the moral outrage, the monster, which some lunatic substitutes for the ideal of magical conception in his obscene operations, represents a scourge, which has reverberations in the invisible world, without any hope of pardon or forgiveness. Now, he who cannot assume entire responsibility for his own actions is a pupil and cannot be initiated. He who can assume this responsibility and thinks of and gives life to evil is a monster of madness. The complete man, aspiring to the divine kingdom through universality, is Buddha. The man sacrificing himself to universality to reach God is Christ. Peace and sacrifice, love and virtue, the ideal and the good, truth and light, this is the magical work I am hastening toward its realization. To convert this love into determinations of time, place, and individuals is diabolical work and black magic. Do not begin any work of magic if not from God. Do not operate without the virtue of purity. Just as you are pure and diligent, so will your work of magic be rewarded with fulfillment. Ariel comes, intelligence, spirit, demon, if you are pure, strong, exuberant, powerful, bold, and vital. As the emanation of the high conception, which animates you, he comes down to be embodied in you. Your arm is his arm, your mind is his mind, your heart is his heart. You command and he commands, you think and he thinks, you create and he creates. Turn the action upside down. Do you want Ariel, who is life, creation, victory, and thought, to descend and come for wicked deeds? Do you thirst for power and do you want an age of tyranny to strike? Invoke him in the same way. Ariel will not come. It is the spirit of lies that arrives, it is the lava of your wickedness that comes to life in the delirium of your passion. Hermetic science of transformation. In 162 the 7th of September, 2019 9:40 AM The mysteries of thaumaturgy 163 Magical practice, based on the infinite intelligence of the purest spirits, is opposed to the passionate state of the human heart that aims at wicked deeds of egotism and separation and revenge. All the spirits that talk to the minds of bad magicians are only larvae of passions. All the spirits that ape the Eternal Father in communications to writing mediums, which incite contempt, separation, and hatred, are only larvae. When the larvae become monstrous, as male, the angel of punishment arrives, and breaks, shatters, destroys, and you fall in the dust, and pay for this astral violation in madness and premature death. Let's now come to the practice. In natural magic, Ariel is lord of the elements, as in divine magic, he is intelligence and force. Natural magic comprises all the operations done by men on the inferior world, on that world that blind men believe to be inanimate and unreasoning. It is natural, that is, acting on natural or created things, whereas it is divine, or acting on the divine world, when it is applied to the natural world and creates. The greatest confusion generally comes about when one confuses the two parts of arcane wisdom or wisdom of the arc, and ordinarily the magician is supposed to be able to act interchangeably on the distinct parts of the universe through identical means. If we apply to man all that I have already explained about the quinary and its astrological relationship, the action of the magician becomes twofold: to command and to pray according to whether he evokes created things to himself, or invokes divine powers for creation. Hence, the two supreme powers of the two categories of operations in magic. To evoke means to call with the voice to oneself, to invoke means to call with the voice in oneself. No work of magic begins without invocation, nor must the disciple universus, spell and read the letters. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 163, the 7th of September 2019, 9:40 a.m. 164. The mysteries of thaumaturgy begin his real initiation without invoking the highest principle or Christ within himself. His physical invocation must correspond to that of his mind. His invocation in the form of prayer must be the sign of his ascent and the hope for his success. The operations of divine initiation toward spiritual ascent begin under the influence of Ariel. Ariel is the center irradiating force and capacity. He is, in magical language, the guardian and guiding angel. Now at this point I think it useful for the disciple, after so much theory, really to try and make a start if he feels like it, and, in order to shift his life away from the world of blind profanity to that of light and force, he must practice the 12 magical aphorisms of Iais Ben Asa, a high priest of the Buriso period. These aphorisms of elementary magic have never been published in the Western world, and form a part the initiatic books of the Egyptian rite. The neophytes to this order are given the 12 aphorisms and are advised to learn them by heart. In expounding these 12 aphorisms, translating them from the original hieratical Syrian, that is, from the ideographs of the period in which the College of Eastern Priests bequeathed them to posterity, I have adapted them to the intelligence of modern people and will add comments as clear as I am allowed to give. Through the study and practice of the laws of these magical aphorisms, which are a synthesis of what is needed to become a priest, the disciple who has followed me up to now can begin his own education. The aphorisms: first aphorism, 1 is the world, 1 is man, and 1 is the egg. The world, the man, and the egg make 3. In each one you see 3, in the world, in man, and in the egg you find 3 times 3. If you want to learn the secret of the egg, reach for 3. If you want to understand the mystery of man, raise yourself to 6. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 164, the 7th of September 2019, 9:40 a.m. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. 165. If you want the intuition of the great arcanum of the world, go up to 9. Inhale and exhale 3 times in order to know the secret of the egg. 6 times for the mystery of man, 9 times for the arcanum of the world. So Jehovah created first the world, then man, and then the egg, and gave the last the secret both of man and the world. So, my son, The first aphorism of sacred and hidden things is in the number 369. Without light, without noise, without any thought whatsoever which is not aspiration to Ea, bury yourself alive with your ears stopped with beeswax and lamb's wool in a cave where no earthly light comes in, and there inhale and exhale 369 until you see the world in the egg of Ea. Second aphorism: when creating the world, Ea contemplated two things, white and black, hot and cold, and his breath became cold and hot, and he gave his hot breath to man and his cold breath to woman, because the former was to kindle and to heat and the latter was to take and to preserve. So you, my son, as soon as you saw the world of Ea, learned what life is and how life is blown from the world of Ea to the world of the egg, and you will discover that the life of male things is not the life of female things, and that only into things having a double nature did Ea blow twice. So, the second aphorism you must remember is that you cannot do a divine work without a knowledge of the life nature in the egg, in man, and in the world of Ea. Third aphorism: once you have learned to inhale and exhale, to distinguish the life nature of males and females in the things of the world of Ea, you must learn to blow, as Ea did in the world, on the egg of things not yet created. Then go back into your living sepulchre, stop up your ears again, and instead of inhaling and exhaling, blow 369 times on the things you. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 165, the 7th of September 2019, 9:40 a.m. 166. The mysteries of thaumaturgy: feel but do not see. While blowing, puff up your cheeks, do not puff up your belly, otherwise the breath will go back where it originated, and you will die. My son, if you practice this rule you will find out how blowing into the sky * you light the fire, pyr. Fourth aphorism: if you have learned how to know the world of Ea, the life of the double breath, and how to light, by blowing, insufflating, the fire in heaven, you will take yourself to the highest mountain in your country, and you will sit on the naked ground putting a fruit tree on the right and a seed on the left. Blowing on the tree, you will dry up the tree as if it were struck by the wind of Skin, the desert, and insufflating on the seed you will remake the tree. Then from the ground you will see a two-headed serpent emerge, and with two voices he will say to you, first, I am the seed, second, I am the tree. Then you will understand that as the two heads have only one trunk, so the seed and the tree are but one. Then you will dry up the new tree and the new seed and will ask Ea to teach you. Light the fire with your breath, and Ea will talk to you from the flames. Fifth aphorism: as soon as Ea has talked to you, his spirit, the giant eggs, Eri, will begin to raise the winds around you. These winds are the source of your power, of your force and your light, but beware of entrusting yourself wholly to them, because Ea and his spirit eggs are stronger than you, and you would die if you were raised alive to where man cannot live. Sixth aphorism: build yourself a ship with a sail that the wind of eggs cannot rend, and as soon as you see the wind swelling the waters and the waters mount * Cielo, Italian, from the Latin caelum, meaning the sky or heaven, and what is hidden or occult. Trans. That is, with a voice from each head. The ark, here we come to the flood. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 166, the 7th of September 2019, 9:40 a.m. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. 167. Into the sky go into the ship and say to eggs, take me where the waters cannot reach me. Then the water will be swollen by 7 spirits of eggs. * Fu, pushes 11, redirects mne, sustains egg, leads more, holds hears and speaks with Macron, sees on the 40th day you will feel the ship touch land. Will say, the water recedes. With Macron will see the top of a triangular mountain. Then, to know the truth, change yourself into a black bird and fly, and you will find the corpses and carcasses that will enchain you. Go back in spirit to your ship and change yourself into a dove and thank Ea. Then X continues to rotate and you will make the waters swell and recede as you like and you will know the second spirit, eyes. My prose, when it seems obscure and I cannot make it more explicit, will serve as a signpost to the mysterious way of him who practices and who will understand in time how and when he is in the conditions I am touching upon. First, I will say a few things that are more congenial to the modern age, and then I will follow them with the comments of Bne Aga, perhaps a priest of a later period than Boso, or perhaps, more exactly, the name of a school or sect. It seems to me that I hear people say, "You, Maestro Kremmerz," in the ideograph the spirit is represented by a dove, from which comes the Holy Spirit or dove of the Catholic Church. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 167 the 7th of September, 2019 9:40 a.m. 168 The mysteries of thaumaturgy want to teach us the practice through 6 aphorisms out of the 9 you promised, but although you may comment on them at great length, we are quite sure you are not going to give us the explanation of such obscurities as clearly as we should like to have it. You will always address us to philosophical reflections rather than to the practice we should like to grasp, in order to see miracles occur. I answer this by summing up in a few words what I have scattered and repeated in previous pages, intending to warn the public about occult truths. I say and repeat to my reader and disciple, if you think that by reading books of occult philosophy you can pluck from the air the secretum secretarum of universal magic, you are deluding yourself. Don't waste your time, wits, and money. For you, books of magic will be a book of abstract poetry full of blue horizons and full of illusions. You can never set your foot into the house of truth if to vague thinking you do not match the action. Thought is faith and is religious. Action is magic and is science. Do not believe anything just through hearsay. Do not believe in traditions that come down to us tired and distorted by human tongues. Do not believe in anything just because men talk a lot about it, nor should you believe only because the testimony of a wise man is given to you. Do not believe in anything just because probabilities are in its favor or because through habit you deem it true. Do not believe in the sole authority of your master and priest. Take as the truth, and live according to it, only what your research and your experience prove is good for your health, your welfare, and for the welfare of other men like you. Hieratical science, I am telling you, was and is considered by common men either as an illusion or a faith, while to the initiate it must never cease being consciousness. Blind faith is becoming to the masses, and is part of religion for the profane. On the contrary, faith as the result of one's own research, after the research has proved its truth, is hieratical science and priestly consciousness. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 168 the 7th of September, 2019 9:40 a.m. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. 169 Never say Magister Dixit, because in this case you will have faith in his science, but not consciousness, and your duty to become an initiate is to possess and conquer the latter through active work under the guidance of the initiator. The man who thinks, aspires, like the Christian believer who recites the Lord's Prayer, to the coming of the kingdom of the Father. The man who practices, accomplishes, like the Father, the kingdom's work. If my reader wants to become a student of magic, he must start practicing, that is, acting, and before acting he must educate himself, and before educating himself he must understand. So, to understand, to educate oneself, to act, here are the 3 pivots in the early practice of magic. In the first part I explained how he who is so lucky as to find a master can receive from him vivissimo animo et brevi tempore, a lively spirit and a short time, all that can be useful for his ascent. To understand, in the presentation of divine secrets do not take the words literally, but consider the intention or spirit behind them. Christ's parables are, like the history of the Jewish migrations, full of struggles and rules, in which each man's name expresses a spirit of action, and each word of battle hints at the conflict of spirit and profane form. The angels are taciturn but active, they speak very little but their actions speak loud. The actions are the work of God, deeds are the language of the spirits of God. Words, speeches, grammatical discourse * belong to the mob and make men similar to beasts that need their voices to express their needs. That's why grammarians, experts in human language and discourse, were highly disparaged by the philosophers of ancient times who flourished from the Orphic and Pythagorean schools of the temples sacred to truth. Subjective silence, or not speaking, places the individual outside any artificial stasis of autonomous creations. Grammata, the spoken word. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 169 the 7th of September 2019 9:40 AM 170 The mysteries of thaumaturgy. The words we pronounce are the confirmation of our own ideas repeatedly realized by means of articulated sounds. Men who talk a lot condense notions that they have not yet physically digested. He who does not believe, but says, ends up believing what he says. Education in inner and personal silence is the best psychical preparation for the separation of the heavier body from the three superior elements. There is no initiation that does not begin with silence. Do not speak of what you will know or of what you will see, and keep silent not just with your mouth, the organ for transmission of thought. Education in silence, by mechanical irradiation, influences the lunar sensibility of the soul, and the latter will learn to be silent, as a closed mouth is silent. Everything must be silent around him who sets out to conquer his reintegration, so that his solar intelligence may be manifest in him. It must be silent subjectively and objectively, with the mouth, in action and in thoughts, while sleeping or waking, because he who speaks creates, and each creation is a displacement of form, and consequently an occultation of primitive amorphous truth, or the spirit of light. The disciple must know how to keep silent and live in the midst of the crowd that is easily influenced, but which does not influence the wise man, whose soul must be insensible to all words, noises, and customs, which are the main influences upon men. And that is not all, he must keep silent with his soul and compel all the spirits who speak to it to be silent also. If the disciple can keep silent with his soul and his mouth, and live isolated in the world, completely alone in the midst of the milling crowd who preaches falsehoods, he will hear the voice of the Master in his spirit and not simply in sound. The first aphorism says, one is the world, one is man, and one is the egg. The world, the man, and the egg make three. If one is the world, the man and the egg are in the world. The logos, or word of the absolute idea, is unique in the world, in man, and in the egg. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 170 the 7th of September 2019 9:40 AM The mysteries of thaumaturgy. 171 Therefore, the same language of facts and phenomena, which represents the evolutionary series of the universal mind 1, includes the language of facts and phenomena of the two unities of the subcategory. 1 equals the world, 1 equals man, 1 equals the egg. But that is not enough. The laws explaining the first unity are analogous to the others. The egg is the spirit because it is a germ, as man is a creature. Because he is the outcome of the germ of the laws of universal unity, and the world is God because he is the language of the universal mind. He who wants to begin to understand, he who wants to get hold of the first keys to the occult treasure of the sciences that form the patrimony of the magicians, must get rid of the whole baggage of profane ideas in order to enter the world of causes, through a synthetic and not analytical process, which is the real and great enigma of sacred mysteries. One is the law, one the existence of all things, one is the matrix of any perceptible form, and beyond this single truth there is nothing but reasoning folly, which has come up with the idea that imperfect man must hope for everything by grace, and that the eternal life of the spirits passes beyond the power of matter, which is the single law, the single essence, the single matrix of what is, was, and will be forever on earth and for all the stars in the firmament. To those preparing for initiation, one is life, quartz, a rose, a beautiful woman, a hideous man are but the production of the same germ of the life of the universe. Has the universe got a soul? It is the same soul that keeps the atoms of quartz together, that colors and withers the petals of a rose, that makes a woman convulse under the spasm of desire, and that makes a man repugnant. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 171, the 7th of September 2019, 9:40 a.m. 172. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. Has the universe got a mind? It is the same mind that manifests itself in different levels of intelligence, in minerals, vegetables, animals. What exists for the common man, stranger to the intuition of Hermetic unity? Nothing but words. What exists for the student of occultism? Only one thing, unity in the most expansive expression of the phenomena of nature. The first aphorism states this law as the fundamental axiom. This is the key to any analogy in the science of the spirit and in religions. If the disciple does not understand this, he will never understand what astrology is for magicians, and he will say it is a superstition, i.e., ignorance that inspires faith, as Bonaventure Tondi wrote in the Revolus Sapientiae, 1680. He will neither understand the spirit of alchemy, nor that of evocations, nor the other of universal love and of the ideal of unity aspiring to God as a return and as an end. But you will try in vain to understand, my reader, if you want to find, expressed in common grammar, the clear intention that animates the magical doctrinal expositions of men who have the power to transmit and preserve the secret of action, the golden fleece of Jason's voyages, the Troy of the Greek wars, and the building of Rome, Urbis, of the Latenda Saturnia. In magic, to understand is to conquer. Ordinarily, men who have the power to perceive the occult truths in scientific expositions of magic, true poems in the classical sense of the word, feel themselves driven to the attempt, by one of those lights, not properly appreciated by common people who took the form of gods, angels, heroes, and spirits of the dead according to the times. And this light speaks to the mind of the disciple and says to him, try, see, touch, and you will succeed. But if this light is wedded to man's pride, it becomes false, and he enters the labyrinth of the Minotaur, a blind alley, long, winding, at the end of which there is folly, death, and dissolution. How many people start properly and finish disastrously when they study the science of the magicians? Why? Because they think they Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 172, the 7th of September 2019, 9:40 a.m. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. 173 understand, but they fail to comprehend. The invisible world speaks the immutable language of unities, which they do not understand. They mix it with their pride and fall into Gehenna, obscurissimi loci diabolidumum, says B. Tondi, from which they emerge completely destroyed. Orientalists and Theosophists, researchers into established methods and formulae of religions, have from time to time affirmed that the principle on which magical assent is based is pride. The ego or logos springs only from the complete and independent intelligent unity. This is true only in the outer form. If you reflect on the fact that every religious and monastic order in all the religions of the world is, as in invisible nature, based on hierarchy and obedience, that the higher spirits, capable of a complete assent, have appeared and appear in every order of the various religions, that in hierarchy and obedience the independent unities are formed without imbalance, then it will be clear that you are in the wrong if, in magic, you think you can separate brother from brother, fellow from fellow, disciple from master, to create the satanic synagogue of disagreement and division, generating terrible passions of hatred that impede the progress of spirit in the highest zone of truth. Read the parable of the prodigal son. This happens between master and disciple, as I know from experience. The son takes his father's wealth and goes far away to use it up in revelry. He supposes that he can find everywhere what he had from his father. One fine morning, when the would-be sage would least like to admit it, the prodigal must recognize that he is less than nothing, that the wealth is gone, that everything has crumbled around him. The light, or light, appears in the disciple's soul and tells him, study, comprehend, work, love. In study, comprehension, work, and love he must embrace the whole invisible and visible world. The light urges him toward a spring where he can quench his thirst for truth. He walks with apprehension, he tastes and says as the biblical God after the creation of water, it vidit hoc bonum es, and he saw that it was good. Then the light comforts him, and he shows himself Hermetic science of transformation. Ind 173 the 7th of September 2019 9:40 a.m. 174 The mysteries of thaumaturgy in the blue waters of the lake. Then man's pride comes into play and the spirit of the earth, which the Bible symbolizes in the serpent, and which Jewish Kabbalists symbolize in Samiel and Astaroth, whispers to him insistently, "You will navigate deep waters and not drown," and seduces him. What forms the mental unity of the Logos in the initiate? The divine light or the spirit of the earth? Obedience or pride? The spirit of the universe or the breath of the beast? This is why, in the present state of civilization of various so-called civilized peoples, really advanced men are rare, apart from within the most austere orders of various religions. In profane social life, man does not pass the test of the serpent of the earth and falls into his jaws. The serpent has the face of a woman or a nice young man, it enchants when it speaks. It puts you to sleep if it breathes, it makes you happy if it hisses. But it inexorably kills any man who entrusts himself to it completely, perpetually, unconditionally. Those who begin have a false understanding when the spirit of the earth predominates in them. It is the spirit of obedience and love that is essentially divine. If you reflect on all the puns and sophisms that the individual spirit of pride can make when talking of obedience and love, you will understand how catastrophic it is to force your own interpretations upon them. And I should like my patient reader, now and forever, to fully understand the spirit of these things, which I am simplifying for him, so that he may eat the roses and see Isis glowing with immortal beauty. To educate yourself and to practice. How do you educate yourself and what do you practice? When the education of the disciple of magic is not started or completed by a master, it must be based on the comprehension of symbols and of the science explained above. If the comprehension is mistaken, Hermetic science of transformation. Ind 174 the 7th of September 2019 9:40 a.m. The mysteries of thaumaturgy 175 Magical education will also be mistaken. It must follow tendencies toward unity in the disciple, that is to say, following the synthesis of his aspirations and potentiality. How do you practice? Here is the problem. Will you start from the egg or germ and ascend to the world, or will you start from the world and descend to the germ? Start from the spiritual germ, and set yourself a fixed and immutable aim. Think that you must reach this aim, whatever it be, as long as it is honest and moral. In order to thoroughly study the means to educate your will, never change your aim. Before choosing it you can consider it as much as you like, But after choosing it, never shrink from your objective. If you have understood the first aphorism, study the germ. Educate yourself to plumb the unknown depths of your spirit for the breath, which will bring about your transformation, and the light will appear to you. It is a mistake for anyone who begins to want to see the outcome of the operations he has done, even in a very trivial form, overnight. Forget it. The realization often comes after endless painful years. I teach my disciples in magic a truth immutable in all times, in all countries, truth beyond speech. Don't deceive yourself, words change like men's moods. Bow only to truth, whatever its name, whatever it's called, truth is one. Jesus Christ, philosophical conscience, the higher self, Buddha * are but the divine principle in us. Talk to yourself and to Jesus Christ as Thomas A. Kempis wanted. Look for the angel contained in your own body, as the mystics say. For you it is all the same, because it is *. Personally, I don't think Western civilization needs to get involved in the sacred terminology and theology of Indian Brahmanism to determine forces, intelligences, and divinities, which in Greco-Latin paganism and in Egyptian antiquity we find represented in symbols that are more poetic and more congenial to European sensibilities. If Europeans have no wish to extend their studies beyond their ancestors' knowledge, it is sufficient for them to examine, understand, and explain Catholic symbolism, a worthwhile study for all disciples of magic. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 175, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. 176. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. Not words that make truth, rather truth is betrayed by the words of men who, after betraying it, are no longer able to call it by its name. Let's read the first aphorism again. One is the world, one is man, and one is the egg. The world, the egg, and man make three. So the magician must perceive within himself the three component parts of his individuality. The world corresponds to the whole of human sensibility, which is in contact with outer or profane society. Thomas A. Kempis says, Ista ist summa per contemptum mundi tender ad regna celestia. That is, despise the world and you will get to heaven. What is this world that we must despise? The senses, vanity of vanities, vanitas vanitatum, says the officiating monk. The world is matter, the sensations of matter, the illusion of material effluvium, spiritually unredeemed human society, pride, ambition, the satisfaction of carnal desires. This world of the Egyptian priesthood was called in the Middle Ages the sublunary world. That is, variable or mutable as the moon. There can be no immaculate conception without putting the sublunary world or the moon under the feet. So the world is within us, it is that part of us that feels earthly effluvia more strongly, it is the most earthly, the most socially brutal part of Homo sapiens. Man corresponds to the second-degree sensibility of the thinking individual. Beyond physical sensibility in developed, so-called civilized, individuals, a hyperphysical sensibility becomes evident. In the thinking individual, man manifests himself only in human mentality, active in society. Thomas A. Kempis says, therefore try to take your heart away from visible things in order to turn all your feelings toward the invisible. Man becomes manifest in us only when mentality is advanced, that is, when the lower sensibility disappears. Those who are recognized as geniuses by contemporary society are only men, mentally developed. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 176, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. 177 and advanced. Intellect has its human explication in the society where it lives as a body, the society that was called humanitas, from humus, soil, the origin of Homo. The second term of the first magical aphorism is made of three terms. the highest of which is still humanus, that is, earthly, though it seems divine to mortals. These three terms of mentality are, man, reason, will, inspiration. Inspiration, which is commonly considered as a principle of divine manifestation in human mentality, is, as I said, only apparently so. We might say inspiration, a kind of entwining of the spirit with itself, and rather than representing the divine term incarnate in man, it represents the highest evolution of the human mind. This human inspiration in magic is represented by the symbol of the moon, because as the moon has the power to reflect the light of Osiris upon the earth and thereby govern our world, so each human inspiration comes as a reflected beam of divine truth. The student, who philosophically studies the secret of the source of the human imagination, can draw a very subtle application of the beams of light reflected on us by a mirror, has the true comprehension of lunar potentiality. What does a crystal surface on which a ray of sun is reflected do? It reflects the same ray weakened, wavering, and diminished in a different direction to give light, albeit with its weakened, wavering, and diminished light, to invisible objects. So it is with the moon, to which human inspiration belongs, which is the earthly vision of things with a light that seems divine, but is human. In comparison to men, women are lunar; in comparison to the master, the disciple is lunar; in comparison to absolute truth, any relative truth is lunar. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 177, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. 178. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. The egg or germ must be understood as the deepest root of the soul known to man. In other words, it is the Jesus Christ of Thomas A. Kempis, that is, the highest and purely divine principle existing in man. The means are two and the ways several. The passive ascetic or religious life is the easiest and the longest. The active initiatic or magic life is the shortest, that is, the fastest. But in nature everything is evolution and everything proceeds by degrees. Rapidity does not mean the suppression of intermediate stages, but the condensation of periods. Consequently, greater are the pains, bloodier the wounds, and more tremendously sharp the crown of thorns. Theologians teach Catholics that the Son of Man suffered the pains of the body, but that the Son of God could neither suffer nor agonize. Now, the Son of Man ends in the spasms of Calvary, which will bring about the resurrection of the Son of God. This is the symbolism of Easter Sunday, which reminds us of symbols that are older than the Psalter, such as eggs or lambs, the patient and innocent martyrs of a deep evolutive mystery, the truth and intelligence of which has not dawned on the people ignorant of sacred mysteries. You do not reach the seed if first you have not destroyed the world in the individual and have not voluntarily made the sacrifice of love of the soul, man, to the divine principle. Once you have understood this principle, you will easily understand the meaning of the sacrament of communion according to the Orthodox Christian ritual. The faithful should reach the knowledge of Christ, that is, according to the prime principle, they should be in contact with the divine self as truth and absolute light common to all men who believe in Christ. But in practice, my dear disciple, only very few men, who are above all human priesthood, since they are already close to the nirvana, which frightens individualists so much, are in contact with the divine self or Jesus Christ. That is why the cult had to magically make use of communion. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 178, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. 179 With unleavened bread and the sanctified host, so that the same Christ, of which the host and the bread represent the realization, consecrated in a symbol, may be taken by all the faithful who are actually still very far from the true Christ. To sum up, The trinitary form is the dogmatic foundation of the religion of Christ in its magic symbolic expression of Catholicism. All this is magic in doctrine and practice. Catholicism divides man into 3 elements: 1 body, 2 soul, 3 divine spirit or Christ. The body is the world and is symbolized in the devil or the rule of the senses and passions, or hell. The soul is the mentality and is symbolized in the gradual purification of thinking man until the highest point of his development, which corresponds to purgatory. The spirit, or Christ, is the divine self or the Son of God made man, the vision of whom is paradise. Hence we infer that hell, purgatory, and paradise are within ourselves and that we are eternal in matter, in human spirit, and in the kingdom of Christ. Spiritualists call these 3 components of the reasoning being: 1 body, 2 pure spirit or soul, 3 pure spirit. But magic in its theosophy, which is always concerned with the teaching of occult truth in man, states that the predominance of one of Hermetic science of transformation. In 179, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. 180, the mysteries of thaumaturgy. These parts in man may be at different levels, and says, the world or the material body corresponding to the least developed individual is instinctive. Corresponding to a more advanced individual it is discerning good from evil for its impressive sensual consequences, and corresponding to a still more advanced individual it is reasoning. All modern studies of criminality should be the experimental field for the 3 material elements in the body of the individual dedicated to brutal sensuality. All the 7 sins, which the Catholic Church calls deadly, enumerate the different instinctive forms of the brutality of the human body. The sexual union becomes possible only as a sacrament, that is, as the sanctification of the infernal act whose excuse is the union of 2 souls. Beware that it is not the union between 2 spirits, because for the Christians one is the Spirit of God, that is, the Holy Spirit, and the incarnation of the Holy Spirit is Christ. The communion of 2 souls in a single soul cemented by love is concrete in its shared inspiration and enjoyment of paradise. Now, 1. Instinct, 2. Judgment, 3. Sensist reason, 2. Man or soul, 4. Pure reason, 5. Will, 6. Inspiration, 3. The egg or Christ, 7. Logos, the Word incarnate, 8. Universal Spirit, 9. God-man, I. The world. In this very short, concise synthesis you can see the number 3s of the first magical aphorism, and everyone will understand these 9 Hermetic science of transformation. In 180, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. the mysteries of thaumaturgy. 181 steps on the way to divinizing man. A divinization that is accomplished not in a 9-year university or high school course but over a long span of years, by rising above worldliness and humanity. To sum up again, many spiritualist mediums who believe they are in communication with spirits no longer incarnate very often are in contact, at the most, only with inspiration, no 6, of the soul stage, and often they speak only with their will, unconsciously acting on inspiration. As for dreams, all ordinary dreams of a sensory origin belong to the world. Symbolic dreams belong to the lunar or inspirative zone and must be interpreted well in order to understand their truth. Only the higher initiate and certain saints, not all of them, have the prerogative of speaking the language of truth with the superior principle of the divine self and of knowing what is. Anyway, in dreams certain men who have not yet reached a very high degree of development may have, by true grace or by efficient virtue of the divine will, the inspirative glimpse, without symbols, of truth, but also these dreams and these men are rare, and are essentially prophetic. To sum up again, in order to practice magical life you must have a definite objective ahead of you. Say to yourself, I want science, or I want virtue, or I want riches, and try to refer your ideal to one of the three magical elements of the first aphorism. Science belongs to the divine principle, virtue to mentality, riches to the world. You will obtain science evolving toward your highest divine principle, virtue, by practicing it, and riches by dominating them. Allow me a digression. Many people want to study magic to acquire riches. In fact, of all the secrets, the easiest is how to become rich. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 181, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. 182. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. Riches represent provision beyond individual needs, of a philosopher who feeds on a crumb of bread and lives in a barrel, and of a millionaire who works and robs his fellow men to increase his patrimony. The philosopher is the richer. Before wishing for riches, one must clarify what one wants. Do you want them to satisfy your life's wants? This is refused only to those who have to expiate errors and sins still uncleansed. Providence is a truth that all just, patient, and faithful men have experienced. The Lord governs his children with two angels, one brings bread, the other honey. Let the just man who is without bread in a field where revelers and rich people disport themselves, never utter the curse, God has forgotten me. Let him pray and he will have. If it comes late, there is a providential reason that makes him experience the pangs of hunger. God does not forget, because the Spirit of God in us is deaf only when we bury it under our lies. The disciple in magic must not desire in prayer. Desiring is contrary to all magical realizations. That is how the false adepts of magic die in despair, without grace and virtue, because they desired before obtaining grace. The disciple in magic sets out his need to God and asks for its fulfillment if it is right to have it. You have no bread, you have no roof. Perhaps it is written in the principle of absolute justice that you must suffer hunger in order to redeem yourself. At the beginning of Il Mondo Secreto I warned not to confuse passive religion with active magic. The practice of magic is the scientific application of the religious theory that is fodder for the masses. To magic can be ascribed, by virtue, man or active, only those beings who are capable of dominating the tide of passivity, which, in symbolism, is represented by the moon. Magical practice, I have repeated this many times, can be followed either by those natures who are aristocratically positive or those with supremely inflexible wills, or by persons who want and feel that it is possible to arrive, not by praying to God, which is something every Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 182, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. 183 One does, but by identifying oneself with the divine active nature and merging it with one's own will illuminated by justice. Not all have the necessary perseverance for this second self-creation over the span of one earthly life by means of the wise practices of magic. Rather, only a few people are capable of working incessantly in our art over the long span of one existence, being guided by the instinct for research on transformation so as to prepare not only their spiritual ascent but also the continuity of their own existence. The occult forces residing in us, integrated into the powers that belong essentially to our animal nature, like the muscles of our body, become atrophied if they are not developed and made elastic by exercise. The will that directs these forces is a reflection of the divine spark that is our intellect. Between magic and religion the difference is enormous. I am speaking to those, that is, to intelligent and young students, who will not be scandalized and confused if I say clearly that magic is the art and the science of making the active man a god and not compelling him to suffer the ebb and flow of the inconstant tides of religious moon. Let no one who hears me be surprised. These words, which may seem bold at the time in which I write, will live long, and the ideas I am sowing will come to fruition when their time is ripe. The Mondo Secreto may finish. Dr. Kremmerz may cease writing and return to the kingdom of heaven, but not one syllable of this truth will be cancelled. And the 40 centuries separating us from the temples of Ur, Babylon, Assyria, Nineveh handed down the political priesthood's true dictate to the resurrection of the judging dead, when the masses, on account of their psychical imperfections and their lack of evolution, could not yet aspire to even know what the priests were about in the depths of their sacred laboratories. Nothing is new under the sun, but the new element in the mystery of this truth, which cannot be fed to imperfect natures in this period, which prepares better centuries for mankind in transformation, is the divulgation of a dogma that is truth. The new part lies in the perception Hermetic science of transformation. Ind 183 the 7th of September, 2019 9:40 a.m. 184 The mysteries of thaumaturgy of this truth by men of different origins and natures, backgrounds and antecedents, characters and thoughts. We are on the eve of the great scientific revolution that unbelieving scientists, researchers in bacteria, do not expect. We are at a psychical moment of mankind's development in which the memory of so many centuries sleeping under the sepulchre of oblivion is awakening the consciousness of the masses. We are playing the trumpet, which will sound the apocalyptic call of the elected spirits in the memory of the preceding consciousness, and the sun will shine on the nature soul of the psychical cycle, and the kingdom of Christ will be a thing of the past. To unite in marriage the two serpents, the invisible one that represents Hermetic sense in its integration, to the visible one, which proceeds from the profane research for the conquest of human knowledge, is a formidable task that takes on the vague and cloudy aspect of utopia. I am not revealing an ancient secret, I am just setting out a program of research and clearing the clouds that cover the simplicity of the formula. The Messiah who is to arrive at the beginning of the 20th century is the link that will unite faith and science and give science the direction of the faith of the masses. I cannot wholly modernize old magical terms. That will be the work of others who come after me. What I have undertaken to do is to spread the word that the magic of the magicians included all the absolute laws, that is, the schematic laws of the existing material and spiritual order, and that its practice created the sage or magician. In order to do this I cannot proceed without illustrating the ancient formulae and without using them. I am taking a step ahead, I am trying to bring together, around this science, some students who do not feel the pressing urge to deny anything a priori. Once the school, not a sect, because science is not a plot, has been established, it's John the Evangelist will come later, but he will have to say, we are children of the magicians, and magic was the wisdom of the ark, therefore truth is one, we are returning to ancient knowledge using new forms. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 184 the 7th of September, 2019 9:40 a.m. The mysteries of thaumaturgy 185 More I cannot say, because to say more would mean to give away to my readers the secret source of my knowledge, which must be known only to the initiates into the occult truth of the scientific temples of contemporary society. However, what I have asserted so far, what I have explained, should make it clear to the readers that other things are hidden under the scientific veil of strange lines that go beyond ordinary spiritualism in its revelation of the poetic souls wandering in limbo waiting for a medium who can make them talk to their still living relatives. In order to continue with the comments on the aphorisms by Ayaz Ben Asir, we must understand that, as is said in the first of them, the Creator is Ea, and that the disciple in priestly science can only find and begin his purely magical and active education in number 3, the egg. This egg, I said, corresponds to the Christ of religious Catholics, but the search for Christ is not the search for a state of the spirit, as taught by the Buddhist propagators of insufficiently detailed doctrines, but a complex of relationships connected to the manifestation of the third state of the incarnate being. This third state is reachable and conquerable, but where the work becomes titanic is in the ascent from number 7 to number 9 from the mirror of truth that I presented on page xxx.x ref to MSP 192, the neophyte without fear, without trembling, without terror, with a very strong will to reach it, passing through the infinite graveyard of human passions and sorrows, reaches the gates of the convoluted Logos, no 7, and believes himself a god, whereas he is only on the threshold of divinity. A beautiful Oriental saga tells of Itana * who made a pact with the eagle of the sun god that he would be carried to the heaven of Anna. So it came about that embracing the eagle he rose into space. And * Orientalists read our hierograms wrongly. It, T, the final letter of the hierogram, represents Ea with Macron dead, that is, fallen. The woman without menstruation, like Saint Anne, who without menstruation gave birth to the Virgin Mary, in her turn mother without the participation of the male. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 185 the 7th of September 2019 9:40 a.m. 186 The mysteries of thaumaturgy. They reached the heaven of Anna. Itana resisted. The earth looked like a speck in space, the sea like a rivulet. But the eagle suggested that they should continue upward to visit the morning star, the goddess Venus, and resumed his flight. When they were about to reach there, Itana looked down and said, "Stop, I cannot go on." The divine bird immediately descended, but Itana fell down dead because his masculine strength had failed him. And yet the neophyte is only a magician at the feet of Isis once he has eaten the roses with which old Apuleius's rehumanized ass was decorated. But in the first aphorism it is said that Ea made the world first, then man, and then the egg. This conceals not the system of creation but the phase of development of divine intelligence in the animal body. Inhale and exhale 3 times, says the first aphorism, in order to know the secret of the egg. This inhale means to draw the spirit into yourself, exhale means to let it out. This is a completely Oriental form to express the attracting and repelling act of the generation of the intelligent principle. But the second aphorism hints at and develops the method of creating magic potency. On creating the world, Ea contemplated 2 things, says Iais Ben Asur, white and black, hot and cold, and his breath became cold and hot, and he gave the hot breath to man and the cold breath to woman, and so on. Is there an essential difference between active life, male, and passive life, female? Once we have put it that the 2 kinds of life are different, and reflected upon it, can a woman become a magician? I will answer briefly, but what I am going to say cannot be clearly understood by everyone in its real meaning, and in its application to the practice. And I am referring to what I said in the first part. The one vital current divides, and realizes itself separately. Both men and women can become powerful magicians if men awaken the female faculties in themselves and vice versa. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 186 the 7th of September 2019 9:40 a.m. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. 187 As for the expression to blow life as used in the second aphorism, the blowing, here, is taken as a symbol of emanation. Blessed are those in whom Ea has blown twice. The 2 souls in the same individual intertwine in love, like the serpents on Mercury's caduceus, and they sing divine fruitfulness. From this we can understand what the ancient initiated priests meant when they said to the disciple, "Bury yourself alive with your ears stopped with beeswax and lamb's wool in a hole where no worldly light can enter, and there inhale and exhale, until you achieve the vision of the world of Ea." In the very powerful exercise of attracting and repelling the spirit of the world, the silent and sleeping virtues of the forces accumulated and reproduced in universal life are awakened. Isolation, moral improvement, the awakening of your occult and hidden nature. This is the simple, literal translation of priestly doctrine. A scientifically perfect man is neither all body nor all spirit, but the integration of the powers of the spirit in the body that feeds it and serves all its manifestations in a constant equilibrium so as to prevent its unity from any prevarication of the two factors of which it is composed. To speak more clearly, a man who lives in a state of exuberance of the soul is imperfect, just as imperfect as a man who vegetates by drowning in the flesh the rights of the soul. Here it is necessary to understand the constitution of man. Man must be considered as a being containing in himself the four elements that constitute the universe: 1. A sensitive and solid body, flesh, bones, tissues. 2. A subtler emanation deriving from the above, which makes up his lower sensibility, nerves, nerve centers, brain. 3. A more complete individuality deriving from the two above, which constitutes his mentality, mental man. 4. A luminous intellective principle, which takes part in universal hermetic science of transformation. Ind 187, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. 188. The mysteries of thaumaturgy life and is therefore an inexhaustible fount of vitality, both spiritual and corporeal. The names that magic gives to these four constituent elements are traditional and borrowed from mythology. 1. Saturnian body, it eats, devours, renews, and reproduces itself. 2. A lunar body, it reflects the above as the moon reflects the light of the sun. 3. Mercurial body, the resulting individuality, mental man with wings at his head and his feet. 4. Solar body, the divine individuality that does not manifest itself to man except through the mercurial body, which, in turn, manifests itself to the lunar body and this latter to the Saturnian body. The disciple must understand that this division is made in order that we understand each other in concrete terms, but it does not really exist in man, because these four bodies are interrelated in such a way that every cell, every atom of the human physical body contains the other three rudimentarily or atomically. Therefore man in his unity and synthesis is the result of two extremes: the physical Saturnian body, which absorbs from the earth and from the purely physical sensations with which it is in contact the education and ways of life that are closest to it, and the solar body, the opposite pole that takes part in the highest life not only of the earth but of the whole universe composed of the infinite worlds making up the planetary systems known and unknown to astronomers. Humus equals terra equals earth, or terrestrial ideas from the physical senses pass to the store of nervous centers, through the nerves that are the vehicles of the Saturnian sensibility. The ideas and divine knowledge, God or Zeus, the thunderbolt, that is, the ideas from the vast and grandiose field unknown to the Saturnian body, come to us from Hermetic science of transformation. Ind 188, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. The mysteries of thaumaturgy 189. The highest or solar individuality by means of the mind or mental and mercurial mechanism. If the lowest sensations dominate, the way to highest perceptions is cut off, and, vice versa. If the solar or divine spiritual principle dominates, the Saturnian body is insufficient to preserve the functions of physical life. The equilibrium of the four elements is represented as a true and real personality, which takes part both in terrestrial and universal life, and which corresponds to the Christ of the Catholics, the Hermes of the Greeks, and the Mercurius of the philosophers. Therefore human integration begins to appear and to progress step by step as Hermes appears and progresses in man. Therefore Hermes is a divine entity if you consider it as the most perfect type of equilibrium between the two binomials, Saturnian Hermes lunar mercurial solar. This would correspond to the beatifying and balanced state of light that predisposes us to the knowledge of the secrets of all that exists. The mythical priesthood said that Mercurius or Hermes was born of Maia, the daughter of Atlantis, who wanted to discover the secret of Olympus, and Jupiter, the king of heaven, to indicate the participation of the Hermetic mind at the two extremes, and the supreme, that is, universal, God gave him wings at his head and feet to execute his orders quickly in heaven and on the earth. This means that this state of lucid mental equilibrium, hermetic and mercurial, has a divine and a terrestrial origin, but acts in the divinity incomprehensible to the common masses and in practical life on earth. Therefore the disciple must understand Hermes as the source of pure, integrating, and infallible science, because it sees in the relative finite and the absolute infinite. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 189, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. 190. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. Do not be confused. I did not say 4 parts, but 4 bodies, each of which is the sublimation of the lowest, that is Saturn, the father of all the others. That is why everything comes from the world of matter. Our Hermetic school proceeds in its analysis from low to high, from matter to light, which is matter in the state of vibration, from matter to magnetism, which is the specific potential of its atomization, from matter to trance, which corresponds to the passive state of consciousness for the freeing of the divinity, neum, which is intensification of light. So our organism has no parts beyond the anatomic divisions, but its components are bodies of an elementary and complex nature, such that every atom, molecule, or cell specifically includes these bodies that are Saturnian in their origin and, in their state of transformation, lunar and mercurial, evolving and sublimating, as far as the vibrating body of light, which is solar. The lunar body, conceived of as a fluid personality, of a lighter matter, which, containing the other 2 higher principles, solar and mercurial bodies, might separate from the physical body, would look like an angel /man, angelus equals messenger, capable of moving without the need for a physical body. The lunar body is the higher part of the material body, and the lower part of man's mentality or spirituality. In the relationships of bodily life, the lunar body is used to receive the impressions of the outer and grosser body, and to express ourselves with a known word. It is formed of the least sensitive part of the intelligent nature and of the most delicate part of the physical body. It is the nervous channel or the channel of the very sensitive force in any animal organism. It is plastic and therefore capable of all possible forms. It is most sensitive and consequently susceptible to the slightest fluctuations of will. Its plasticity, coupled with its very high degree of sensitivity, makes it changeable and makes it active as the receptacle of *. Note from Ha-Hajat, extract from the appendix of Opera Omnia by Giuliano Kremmerz, Volume 3, La Scienza dei Magi, Rome, Edizioni Mediterranee, ed. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 190, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. 191. All that acts sensibly upon it, and on it all sensory impressions stop and make their mark. All the impressions of a sensorial origin pass from the Saturnian body and constantly and continually reflect on the sidereal body, which is also called Christ, as it is, and the Lamb of God on account of its meekness, because, like the Lamb, you can do what you will with the sidereal body. Its plasticity, its sensitivity to impressions, is millions of times more delicate than the sensitivity of the most sensitive of photographic plates. This accounts for, as we can accept without fear of error, all that asceticism attributes to it. It is in you, it sees, feels, and remembers everything, it keeps everything for the day on which you shall be judged. The sidereal body brings all the impressions of the senses together, it separates, mixes, and returns them on request, just as photographic negatives make copies of different sizes. It is the female of the physical body, that is, It receives from the physical body, through sensations, images of the physical world, keeps them, establishes them, nourishes them, and returns them, in an occult way, to the physical body that, forgetting that it created them, accepts them and becomes their envoy. The nervous system of the human organism, lunar matter, is the delicate intermediary between intelligence, mercurial matter, and the external world. By means of it, verbal, phonic, written, or drawn manifestations are possible. The whole essential part of man is found there, in the sensitivity of this lunar and pre-mercurial matter that constitutes our being. It is a filter of the influences of natural energies. It is a fine sieve that, selecting the impressions of external forces, brings them to the brain in a modified form. Magical or hermetic purity, but not religious purity, is the conscious and unalterable neutrality we keep compared with our fellow men. A man who, at the peak of his perceptive powers, can be neutral. Note from Ha-Hajat, extract from the appendix of Opera Omnia by Giuliano Kremmerz, Volume 3, La Scienza Magi, Rome, Edizioni Mediterranee. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 191, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. 192. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. Who can, therefore, keep his consciousness serene, integral, separated from sensations, and ready to judge them without any interest whatsoever, rises above the level of the human mob. In the ordinary man, the pure intellectual principle, sun, is enclosed in the mercurial body, which in its turn is contained in a lunar shell, which is more corporeal and sensitive only to the volitive actions of the physical body, a common type who, not having developed his pure intelligence, bows before a god outside himself, that is, before voices, sounds, movements that the body apprehends outside and not within itself. In profane society two gods are followed, the instinctive, individual god of one's base animality, and the one who speaks through other people's mouths, that is, in received ideas, scientific, religious, moral, and so on. What is silent in man living in society is simply the solar god, who, when he saw the alliance had been broken, hid his face. An ordinary man is sensitive to a greater or lesser degree to sensory impressions from outside, that is to say, that he is at times more ready to reflect according to his constitution. The same man, on the same day, is in different conditions of physical consciousness. The state of perfect mastery of one's being is not constant in the same individual, whatever it may be. Notably, desire and the state of concupiscence breach the pure normality of consciousness and make it drowsy and go to sleep. To strip oneself of the modernity of one's being is a very difficult thing to do, more for the cultured than for the uncultured, because the latter does not abound in fascinating and dazzling feelings, and older ways dominate in them more easily. The priestly purification imposed on the neophyte was just this cleansing of the consciousness of those aspiring to the light, the wiping away of any influence of the mob. Only that one of pure consciousness is granted freedom beyond the relative limits of time and space, and my present comment wishes to indicate, as the only preparation, this state of purified consciousness that is the key to the Hermetic gate. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 192, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. 193. Prayer, chastity, fasting, of which we have spoken, stripped of any mystical idea, contribute to the gradual liberation of the lunar body, seat of the magician's astral, from the sensory impressions coming from the Saturnian body. And this is not because the sensory impressions are no longer recorded as they arrive by the lunar body, but because their reception is no longer followed by an upsetting resonance in the affective and emotive spheres. With the conquest of such a state of freedom, our purified lunar body, the Mary of the Catholics, will no longer be the eternal battlefield between action and reaction, and only then will it be possible to begin to hear the inner voice that now speaks unheard in each of us. The rites of purification have their raison d'etre in their effects. Initiation starts, in fact, not only in words, as soon as the vulgar man starts to hear the inner voice, the Christ, the angel, the genius. Now the chapter of Ariel is drawing to a close, and the only way I can sum up what I have said or hinted at about occult Ariel is to sum up the laws that allow you to come into the possession of the force in magic, laws that can be applied to the magical education of the disciple. The catechism of the first stages of magic: those who want to succeed must keep silent, but must operate while keeping silent. To operate is to act. You act on apparently inanimate things and on visible and invisible animate beings by means of 3 factors: 1 will, 2 science, 3 equilibrium. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 193, the 7th of September 2019, 9:40 a.m. 194. The Mysteries of Thaumaturgy. 1. Rites and will. The rites are, for the disciple, like magical instruments, the key to any magic that develops. Therefore the rites against which all ignorant people rebel are the most powerful aids to educate and direct the will, to take the place of science in those who have none, to generate equilibrium in those who are subject to passions. Whole religious stories are kept alive by rites full of wisdom, the key to which often, too often, is lost to the priests. If you abolish rites in this state of priestly consciousness, you will destroy religion. A rite and a ritual formula do not magically obey the conscious personality of the operator. They obey the private consciousness of the individual, that is, the occult consciousness of the integral individual. If there is no homogeneity between the occult and normal consciousness, the effect of the rite, although it is a definite contribution to the chain of the scholar, is often in direct contradiction to the desires expressed by the practitioner. In magic, the practice of a rite is, in itself, an arcanum, because he who enacts it must will, and in magic the hermetic meaning of the word will is not what we humanly understand it to be. Hence many misinterpretations, much dejection, a great many mistakes. Human exercise of will lies in the specific mastery of the impulsive passion that often takes the form of logical reasoning, so it seems that when we humanly will something, we will it with our whole selves, whereas it is only the relative, lower consciousness that has become intoxicated. Will has a real magical potential either when it is the predominating expression of our occult consciousness or when the outer personality agrees with the occult individual within us. In those who act magically we can notice the same as can be noticed in mediums. In them the state of trance, when it is deep, often shows an occult personality in direct contradiction with the visible one. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 194, the 7th of September 2019, 9:40 a.m. The Mysteries of Thaumaturgy. 195. The integration of man begins when his conscious personality coincides with the consciousness of the occult and historical man. Those who do not understand this must not waste their time trying to perform magic, because they are destined to fail. A magical practice differs from religious prayer in that the former must found its volitive power on the inner will and enhance the worth of the image, imago equals in magus, while the latter comes from the exterior consciousness that believes in what is above and in what it does not see. To educate the will is to direct it, to replace science is to generate. Active equilibrium cannot be obtained without the magical method. Regnum regna ordo. To operate is to learn while acting. You go to the war first as a conscript and then as a veteran, but when you are a veteran you can show the wounds received when you were a conscript. To will and desire. In order to initiate oneself to the practice of magic one must determine clearly one's will and its purpose. Willing and knowing how to will is a great secret. Those who will and do not know how to will are not magicians and will never become such. To will is not to desire. Desire kills will. Desire without will is enough to destroy any work of magic. 3. Will and invocation. The angel of the will is Ariel, strength or will, because the most powerful force is the will of a man who knows what he wants. Without repeating myself, I say to my disciples, if you want to draw strength to yourself, invoke and evoke Ariel, and the angel will bring it to you. To invoke means to call in oneself. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 195 the 7th of September 2019 9:40 a.m. 196 The mysteries of thaumaturgy. To evoke means to call to oneself. All things that are called will come. Orpheus moved mountains playing his lyre. One must become like a little Orpheus to draw toward oneself the invisible atoms of the generating force which is universal life. For Ariel and the will soul, this universal life consists of tangible and ethereal matter. But ether is matter also, consequently, life is matter. The vibrating action of this matter is intelligence in motion, or active will, which as a resulting outcome of matter in vibration is matter soul. Ariel, like all angels, like all spirits, like everything that is, must be considered tangible in every respect, even in the ultra-normal intuitions of the human mentality. Invoke Ariel if you want to become strong. Ariel comes when the weak call him to help them in all good works. David stands before Goliath. Jehovah sends him Ariel. The stone hits the giant, but the cause was just in the integral concept of the Israelite phase, otherwise Ariel would not have answered, or he would have become a devil and cheated the daring boy. All this means that Ariel lends his strength only to just men. He only helps just causes. Therefore, to invoke the god of force one must feel, or better, identify oneself with, divine justice. By this I wish to warn those who think they can use visible or invisible spirits only to satiate filthy lust. In order to draw the angels one must have the justice of God, otherwise winged spirits, like the eagle, will not come. I have said and repeated this many times. In invocations, human nature coincides with a nature similar to its own, on a different level. When such a nature is a god, the operator is deified. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 196 the 7th of September 2019 9:40 a.m. The mysteries of thaumaturgy. 197 5. Will and words. There are rites and conjurations for successful invocations. The Latins called them carmina, the Hebrews called them psalms, the Italians, spells. The vibrations that set the ether in motion in the world of very fine matter are rhythmic by their very nature. Sublime mathematics contains the keys to the series and relationships between the vibrations generated by will and the repercussion of the volitive act of ether on the tangible and visible world. Words are articulations of musical notes produced from the mouth, a kind of trumpet whose sound is modulated at will. Each note corresponding to a syllable or a letter has a vibrating value on the ether. The arts of oratory and drama and singing are based on the theory of sounds, except when the harmony of ideas does not coincide with the art. Words act tangibly, like all sounds, on the auditory apparatus of sensitive persons. But that is not all. Certain sounds produced in a particular way act powerfully on the human psyche as a magnet does on iron. The experiments of sounds on sleepwalkers who fall into catalepsy are old. In the theater, huge crowds of spectators are drawn by a note produced by a sweet and powerful voice. In an army and before a battle, a few words spoken by a leader can decide the outcome. Therefore the word or rhythmic sound has a powerful and tangible effect on living things. The grandmother's lullaby sends the child in his cradle to sleep, the child who has not yet become conscious of ancient ideas carried on from his previous lives, and on whom the singing acts mechanically. Therefore, the word is a force. Ariel is or can be invoked by means of powerful words. Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 197, the 7th of September 2019, 9:40 a.m. 198. The Mysteries of Thaumaturgy. 6. Will and conjurations. These powerful words are songs and articulated emissions of will. Whether they be animated or not by concrete ideas, these words are the more powerful the more magnetism they have imbued in them by other operators, and the more their sounds correspond to the ideas you want to awaken. The Psalms of the Hebrews are magical. But in Hebrew they have more power than in Latin, and you must have the key to use them. But more powerful than the Psalms are the imprecations, exorcisms, and spells of Egyptian and Chaldean magic, because when they are pronounced or sung, not only are the ideas of the previous generations in the astral zone awakened, but the spirits of 50 and more centuries of practitioners who have mechanically repeated them are involved in giving them force. That is why these spells are given only to those who deserve them, because they are forces by themselves already actively vitalized, so much so that their effects are rapid and precise, unlike prayers already accepted in Catholic liturgy, the Psalms, which have a relative value on account of the different manner in which they have been used. If a magician tells you that with one word he put thieves to flight, believe him, because it is possible. If a practitioner of devilish magic tells you that he possessed a woman just by speaking to her for the first time, believe him, because it is possible. Certain words, which we do not repeat in vain, are the patrimony of very exceptional men who will spoil their effectiveness if they overuse them, because they learned these words directly from the heaven of Ea, and each of them contains in synthesis an embryonic act of creation. Woe betide those who do not utter words in time, thus allowing the vital germ of creation to miscarry. The invocations of the usual rituals and grimoires are almost worthless. The spells are not spoken when people can hear them with the ears of the physical body, but are shot like so many arrows, at a distance. Or Hermetic Science of Transformation. Ind 198, the 7th of September 2019, 9:40 a.m. The Mysteries of Thaumaturgy. 199. Close at hand, at the mental body of things or of beings that are evoked. In magic, not to speak means also not to say useless words. When the magician speaks, he must operate. When you speak, you heal, console, save, or kill. The mystery of words and sounds in magic is a deep one. 7. Will and graphic signs. We must now consider additionally that each word is not only a sound but also a graphic expression of the sound, if the vibratory waves of the sound are reflected on the delicate devices that serve as receivers. I have given the example elsewhere of the sensitive phonogram from a phonograph where the sound is spontaneously recorded. Considering that the nature of the human psyche is 1,000 times more sensitive than a phonogram, you can understand that each sound can be translated into graphic signs. So Ariel is in the expression of signs. When the signs are graphic and are generators of force, the angel comes at your mere drawing of these characters. To explain more clearly, the disciple in magic must not only study deeply the value of words articulated in time to generate sensations, but he must also translate them graphically by means of the sphygmic art or art of pulsations and of beats, whose general and some particular laws are found in that well of truth that is the Hebrew Bible, written in Hebrew letters without dots, and for those who do not know Hebrew, in Plato, Aristotle, and Avicenna, and for those who know only the vernacular, certain traces, very few, indeed, can be found in the poets before Dante Alighieri, in Dante himself, and in Petrarch. Between the thought and the character representing it there is a whole law of evocation and reproduction of the labor involved in generating it. Ciphers, characters, sacred words, have a value corresponding not to the will of those who use them for the first time but to the sum of Hermetic science of transformation. Ind 199 the 7th of September, 2019 9:40 am 200 The mysteries of thaumaturgy all the wills of those who used them, namely, millions of strong, serene, and effective wills. Talismans represent creations of the initial wills or evoked will, something like a psychical tool, that is, one that acts on the psyche or soul by impressing like a seal on the virgin wax of the soul the subtle properties evoked through signs, ciphers, and so forth. Their power depends on the relative perfection and force of the one who makes and keeps them, and their effects come more or less speedily and are more or less powerful depending on the ciphers, characters, analogies and the magical capacity of the one who makes them. They are analogical manifestations of will and not of desire. They are reflected manifestations of will on the human soul, instruments of little, brief miracles of time, of force, and of expansion limited to willed effects, according to the intensity of the force of the one who has made them. 8. Science and will. Aerial force is the principle and consequence of science. Science is the intensive and concrete application of force in magic. The magus must have a perfect knowledge of the action of psychical and hyperphysical forces in order to obtain the realization of aerial. By this it is proved that in magic no application, explication, or adaptation of will exists without the foreknowledge of the way it works. Those who act on impulse by the revelation from that sensitive subconscious, which forms the substrate of mediums and hysterics, are not magicians but good subjects in the hands of a person who knows what he does and how to do it. On the contrary, those who consciously work, even if only employing a very small portion of their will force, can be called magicians or sages. I will digress for a moment to say why therapy classifies the most presumptuous physicians among the empirical. All the above-mentioned scientists, including the physicians who diagnose known infirmities, are Hermetic science of transformation. In 200 the 7th of September, 2019 9:40 am The mysteries of thaumaturgy 201 infallibly such when they do not depart from the observation of the immutable laws of nature in matter, in the order of creation, in the spirit, and in the natural and inferior elements. The physician appears out of the darkness of old empirical medicine, studying the human body assiduously until he can describe the minutiae invisible to the naked eye. Cast a glance at the history of anatomy, up to the improved microscope, and you will see that man has wanted to realize exactly what the human body is made up of. He has succeeded. There is no cell that has not been explained by research. There is no pore that is not the subject of a specialized text. But when man has wanted to give health to his infirm body, his science has failed him, and the tombs opened and open today as in the time of Ernest and the school of Salerno. The pathogenic elements that contemporary physicians look for in bacteria to explain the spread of diseases and that will go out of fashion faster than we think, will be found by future medicine in an element inconceivable to present-day research, in the spirit of man in contact or in contrast with the spirit of things. Then a deep revolution in human knowledge will take place and that will mark the end of the world, that is, the end of the world of educated ignorance that hurls thunderbolts and excommunications against those who contradict it. The age of darkness will come to an end, and a new era will begin in which human sciences will be sciences of the human spirit. Then the social condition of peoples will change, because the Spirit of Christ will have become flesh. Human justice will be a precise, conscious, and constant reflection of divine justice that today, to imperfect man, often seems like divine injustice because men, who are relative in all their conceptions, can neither imagine nor understand justice in the absolute. To study the vital principle in us, to separate it if it is separable, to integrate it if it is integrable, to bring it to the peak of its potentiality, to make it capable of drawing the maximum energy from the source of the universal life principle, until it can use it and nourish itself on it, and nourish the organisms which lack it. All this represents the Hermetic science of transformation. In 201, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. 202, the mysteries of thaumaturgy, Hermetic education, and leads to the concept of a Hermetic physician. Hermeticism finds a help, which all modern physicians fail to consider, in the spirit or deep intelligent vitality of the patient, on which spirit you cannot act with drugs but with the quintessence of all the drugs of the three kingdoms, which is synthesized in the spirit or intelligent vitality of the physician who cures, that is, helps the patient to overcome his illness. The arcanum of the recovery of strength is, in its mechanics of self-nutrition, conceivable because it explains the result of the revivification of human strength after a very short and light sleep, but it cannot be proved by the ordinary methods of scientific demonstration. No vitalist theory has ever come near the conception of a man's synthetic vitality being connected to a center, a nodule, or magnetic cell making up the being, and that is in a relationship of reverberation and resupply with a terrestrial magnetic center that in turn is connected to the magnetic center of the planetary and stellar worlds of the whole universe. Single center of energy, single magnetism. Not unity of force, but a single central force of life, all expressions of which are only states of being. The essential intelligence of the being, which is a predominant part of distribution, causes adaptations and rapidly changing forms of the specific units. Sleep is the indispensable condition to restore our used energies. All the dispersions of our energy are accumulated currents of vital magnetism that are externalized and enter into the great invisible river of terrestrial and universal vibrations to return to the universal center of life. If the integration of human powers can lead to the formation of the magus, a living reservoir of forces drawn from richer sources of energy, a simple progression of the magnetic richness accumulated in us through a provocation of acts and attractions of non-human entities can make divine or hermetic medicine possible so that we can be useful to all those who suffer and come to us. Hermetic science of transformation. In 202, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. the mysteries of thaumaturgy. 203 knowing that we are radiating centers of life drawing intelligent and essential vitality from the inexhaustible center of the universe world allows us to conceive the value of the Lord of causes as being the most bountiful, measureless, and the noblest provider ever conceived by religious or mystical imagination. In patience, every crisis that heals takes place in sleep, a pain disappears only in sleep. The state of coma is a state of sleep in which the magnetic nuclear centers strive to secure a resupply that does not come, and when the means that make up the human organism as a center of magnetism become too weak, the dissolution of the organism is at hand. To return to the point, as in profane knowledge, empiricism is excluded and cursed because only the application of what we know is considered wise. In the high sciences of the spirit only a man who uses the spiritual laws conscientiously can be called a magus, cum scientiarit ration, as the scholastics used to say. Where science is, Ariel is, that is, the divine and magical force, capable of working miracles. Because as the visible world is known to the profane, so the invisible must be known to the initiate. Who are you that following the inspiration without having the knowledge of the inspiration itself obtain an accidental result? Are you a magician or are you the plaything of the manifestation of the unknowable and the invisible? 9. How force is communicated. If you have a visible master, beware that his science is a light that cannot be given away. But as fire kindles dead coals, by communicating the elementary aerial of fire, he kindles in your soul the fire of science, and through the science he communicates the force to you. The method wished for by the profane of an exposition of the laws of knowledge to the disciple cannot be followed and cannot be adapted to the teaching of magic. Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 203, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. 204, the mysteries of thaumaturgy to convert you. If you are prepared for an improvement, the Master calls upon your developed reason and he affiliates you to his school to make your first steps easy. Like a master to the pupils in the common school, he gives you what he thinks is useful. But, says the skeptic, what can convert us is the imposing result. If you pretend to be a master and want to convert us, do so. But what does the master care if you do not want to convert yourself to spirituality? The question resembles that of a child who was visiting St. Peter's. Daddy, why don't you buy a dome like St. Peter's to put on our house? The father, smiling, said to his son, Dear child, our house is not fit for that dome. We must first prepare the house, then we will put the dome on it. Do you think, you who have a sound intellect, that the organism of a spiritually evolved man, capable of giving you proof of transcendental and intellectual phenomena, can be the dome for any modest house? I will simply tell you this, allow me to give you the certainty of an occult power, be it human or extra-human, through a progressive initiation. This practice serves to trim the naked psychical organism of the neophyte, giving him the possibility of achieving phenomena of a superior order, and it is the key to a whole philosophical building, which will have its great influence on the creation of a school that will facilitate individual research and the progress of those who will feel spurred on by success to continue their research. Just as the superior intelligent world manifests itself to the inferior only through symbols, analogies, and assonant words, so the teaching of magic is accomplished through analogical acts, which the master practices upon the disciple. The science of the masters of fire can be communicated only through contact, whereas the masters of light communicate it only in silence. When you read the holy books, says the Church, look at the Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 204, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. the mysteries of thaumaturgy 205 spirit that is contained in them. But when you read the books of magic you must stop neither at the words nor at the spirit of words. Beyond what is said and shown there is a master who indicates a goal for you to reach, and stimulating the thirst of the disciple teaches, without saying so openly, how to reach the goal. So to learn is to understand, and to understand is to steal the force that nobody gives away to you. So in you the beast dies and the angel is born. Magic is an aristocratic science and avoids teaching to the masses, which must have the intuition of the existence of the divine science, but cannot possess it. However, he who from the masses harvests the seed and conquers science and force, becomes monarch of all. Know how to understand, and you will learn. 10. Science, will, and force. If you unite science and will, you will find the solution to the problem of force, but not the means to adapt and focus force on the things to be changed. But if science is in union with will transformed into force, all miracles are possible. Follow these rules to adapt the force: 1. Will without desiring. 2. Will without fear. 3. Will without regret. Wish, fear, and regret kill the will. Before operating in difficult or doubtful things, do not start if you have not put a distance between yourself and the 3 sins of the magician. If you desire, fear, and regret it, enchantment will not work, and all forces weaken. In paragraph 2 I said that to will is not to desire, now I say that regret or fear neutralizes every act of will. In order not to wish, not to fear, and not to regret, you must feel just in a divine way, that is, without the human prejudices of selfish justice. Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 205, the 7th of September 2019, 9:40 a.m. 206, the Mysteries of Thaumaturgy. 11. Equilibrium and force. To inspire oneself by absolute justice means to be in equilibrium, to be just. Therefore, will, science, and equilibrium are the three essential conditions of aerial or the magus of force. 12. Justice and force. Will without science and science without equilibrium is the negation of any kind of magic. A magician must not do all he wants, only what it is right to do, otherwise his action would be a sinful violence against all power and all natures inferior to his own. Do you want to have the force of a god? Be as just as a god. Do you want to have the force of a devil? Be as unjust as Satan. Force in magic is a providential action that is fruitful and beneficial when it agrees with the providential principle, but it is not such when, by reaction, it draws against itself all the repercussions of justice done. Reason is order, order is God, because order is justice. Madness is disorder, disorder is Satan, because disorder is injustice. 13. Purity and force. The magic of passions is dominated by invoking the purest aerial. Passions are dominated through purity. Pure force is without passion. Impure force is rich in all the torments of passions. Magical and hermetic purity, not religious purity. Our purity here, understood integrally, is the conscious and inalterable neutrality that we maintain toward our fellow men. Purification means to eliminate all that modern education has imposed on us and present oneself naked for baptism. Sikatirat in Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 206, the 7th of September 2019, 9:40 a.m. the Mysteries of Thaumaturgy. 207 Principio, as it was in the beginning, thus unveiling the dormant self and evoking all natural powers of the soul in its simplicity. Every feeling of hatred or love, every interest of the hermetic operator in the realization of something desired nullifies, destroys, and makes the expected result useless. That is why I said that the feeling of justice is the only factor of any progress toward reintegration. There is an obstacle, which opposes us, whenever our being moves toward evil. Why does Hermetic medicine easily obtain miraculous results? Because you cannot come running to help the sick with hatred. Nobody can help or have the will to help a sick person he hates, it would be a contradiction of the aim of the work. 14. Passions and force. Can passions be used as stimulants of the organism for the production and invocation of armed aerial? I mean, can sin or vice be the stimulant for the unleashing of occult powers in some creatures? Yes, but this is the despicable method of the sects of bad magicians. Divine magic finds a stimulus only in virtue. Virtue is aerial, virtue is force, virtue is purification. The pure source of divine magic lies in love of one's fellow men, in the sacrifice of oneself to one's fellow men, in the sacrifice of one's possessions to the redemption of others. The love of one's fellow men must be Christian, that is extremely pure, extremely chaste, and without any expectation of reward. Sacrifice means pain. In the deep poetry of love without expectation of reward and of pain without expectation of relief, pure magic finds the spring of all great miracles, the faith in the endless glory of the other world and the joy of coming near, through the burnt offering of one's own self, to a Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 207, the 7th of September 2019, 9:40 a.m. 208 the Mysteries of Thaumaturgy. 15. The purity of aerial good and evil in magic depend on the purity and justice of the operator rather than on the means the operator uses. Good and evil must stay in the vestibule and not come into the temple, in the peristyle, that is, where the crowd of traders throng whom Christ drove out of the temple with his whip, but in the occult, where only the inexorable law of progress in nature and its generation exists, there can be only absolute good, that is, the justice that is Jehovah, the invisible God who manifests himself through his uncompromising and fatal goodness in the act of creation. 16. Ariel, the creator, the man who wants to achieve the power of working with the force, justice, and purity of Ariel must not in the generative acts of creation resemble men, nor must he model himself on their passions. In this lies his absolute resemblance to God, in this lies the complete success of his ascent, whatever his background, his means, his systems of creation and fulfillment. Devilish magic and angelic magic, white and black magic, are only vague and vain words before which there is only one fact, the possibility of the magician to imitate and penetrate divine nature, that is, the nature of things that can be and are to be created. My disciple must learn that in order to give up all man's passions, to purify himself of all the grave and heavy chains that bind the body of the enshrouded angel, only two divine virtues have to be followed, the love of men and forgiveness. These two virtues are implied in the ideal of charity. Man makes for himself a curious statuette of charity as he does of God, and nourishes it with ambition, vainglory, ignorance, human providence, and philanthropy. Let the sensible reader closely examine the institutions of civilization so that he may see how different they are from the divine charity of which Buddha and Christ speak. This Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 208, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. The Mysteries of Thaumaturgy 209 marks how barbaric we are now, in an age when social selfishness predominates in all acts of the sovereignty of states as against the interests of the subjects. All the theories, which now seem the most utopian and impossible, would find their possible realization in the transformation of human nature into good, that is, in the divine regeneration of man fallen from his divine rights. But the law that governs spirits and things in their transformation is one. It is the serial law, geometric or arithmetical according to the value of progressions. It is a law of regeneration for suffering according to the degree of convulsion of the social organism. But charity is still very far from the modern ideal of trading charity in politics, in religious societies, and in families where gold, which represents the synthesis of all well-being, only serves to spread the prejudice that good lies in pleasure and evil in pains. Human institutions have substituted the word philanthropy for the word charity, but only when philanthropy becomes charity again will we have gone up another step in priestly perfection. Any disciple who works in magic must know how to love and forgive. Love without selfishness is divine, although women cannot conceive how they can be loved intensely and ideally without any blemish of jealousy, which represents the condensation of selfishness in love. Love is the most fascinating charity of instinct, its decadence is the prostitution of all noble feelings, that is, divine and divinizing feelings in men. Love is the most precious complement of social intercourse, and it is the key of the purest Isis that opens the fruitful treasures of divinity in fallen human creatures. The mysteries of Venus were nothing but the celebration of the cult of this comprehensive love, which unites the two poles of creation, in the creation of vital and intelligent Mercury. The mystic rose is the rose of love. La Romane de la Rose and courtly love in the Middle Ages, the songs of the troubadours, the poems like Dante Alighieri's, Brunetto Latini's, and others are only the romances of charity in love, and the romance is love through charity. Nobody was ever a poet without love. According to these people Mary, Our Lady of Sorrows, should be the evil Mary. Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 209, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. 210 The mysteries of thaumaturgy. Poetry is depicted as love, but in love there is truth, that is, charity in embryo. From here come the satanic rituals extolling the glory of generation made of impure love and abortion made of prostitution and of life without love, of life that is entirely sensual and libertine. Forgiveness is one side of the purest love. To know how to love means to know how to forgive. A father and mother forgive their son, who is their love. Among all false loves, the least false is motherly love because it is the least selfish. And yet not even motherly love is true, except in the unconsciousness of forgiveness, and the mother who cries over the pain, which regenerates her son, is selfish, as the great majority of mothers are. Learn to forgive and you will become gods on earth. Let not the offense touch you, and consider your offender as an innocent child who spits in your face. Divine and divinizing magical education is education in forgiveness, otherwise a magician would become a powerful instrument against all the passions of other people. Love and forgiveness united in charity are completely different from philanthropy on account of the divine character of the former and the human character of the latter. Charity is as powerful as the sacrifice of the relative being to the absolute being. Philanthropy is the passion of zoophiles who try to protect animals, to alleviate their sufferings, but not to have them sitting at their dinner tables, nor to pull heavy carts in their stead. Charity is the reaction of the world of matter against the world of spirit. Charity is carnality spiritualized. Christianity feels the charity of others, because it transforms itself into their flesh and physical sufferings, that is, it feels the pain the others feel, which is quite different from philanthropy, representing the pure and simple feeling of friendship toward a suffering man. An example of charity is when the mother feels anguish in her bowels when her child cries with hunger. Philanthropy, on the contrary, is a cerebral virtue, which would not be afflicted by the show of other people's misery. Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 210, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. The Mysteries of Thaumaturgy. 211 If every man evoked in himself the Christ who sacrifices himself for the good of other people, the society of present-day thieves would be changed into an earthly paradise. That is why it is said, and I say, that any character that causes separation is a social evil, and all good comes from human solidarity. 17 Dominant Ariel. Those who succeed in changing hatred toward their enemies into love, dominate them inexorably. The triumph of love lies in the active force of its justice and is unconquerable in its powerful victory. Ariel as the force and attractive spirit of love is bountiful in forgiveness. The virtues and vices of souls are exchanged in direct proportion to their reciprocal love, and in inverse proportion to their hatred. The stronger the love between two people, the more they exchange their respective virtues through their love. This explains why you cannot dominate a person you hate, while you can possess the person you love. This is the law by which the virtue of all real things is spread, and visible and invisible societies come together and break apart according to the same law. Bismarck said that law was a silly invention of the weak, whereas there is no other law but force. In the absolute he is right. This force is law because the God who is not just is not strong. Remember the fable of the puppy who attacked a lion. The lion, bitten, found that the puppy's teeth had not even broken his skin. Then he said to his enemy, "Look, I could kill you and eat you. I will spare your life because you are so little." The puppy tried again, with the same result. The lion let him do it, and again spared him. Now, the force of the lion made him generous, but, had the lion not been strong, he would not have had the forgiveness of the mighty. Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 211, the 7th of September, 2019, 9:40 a.m. Epilogo. Ariel, ray and power of the force of Jupiter, after man, who is a microscopic part in the immensity of the universe, has known you. He sees the divine spark that was in him has been rekindled in its primitive splendor. Where are you? Do those who invoke you see you? Will those who invoke you hear you? What do you look like, O martial spirit, in blinding light and fire? What does your voice sound like in the harmony of visible things? What is your love like, what your power? In the Eastern civilizations you kindled the splendor and magnificence in Nineveh, Babylon, Memphis, in Thrace, Orpheus enchanted you, in Greece Jason tried to conquer you, Hercules to charm you, in Rome you became the eagle of knowledge and empire, in the Christian world you spoke of the truth on the cross. In the world everybody invokes you, everyone adores you, because they only see of you the face of a man, horned and bountiful. They do not know that you become providence through charity and that you are beneficent in the glory of justice. Be bountiful in giving to my disciples, who call you in the high and silent hours of the night, as they burn the midnight oil in their studies where the volumes of human knowledge are accumulated. Appear to them in the form of a gnome or an elf, dazzling or ethereal, sitting on the frame of an ancient painting, then speak to the neophyte who wants to do and to know. Tell him the truth, the naked truth, then smile upon him and give him time to reflect. 212 Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 212 the 7th of September, 2019 9:40 AM Epilogue 213 Among the things you will tell him, do not forget to address him thus: there is no science without silence, no force without charity, no power without justice. I am the virtue, the one who transforms and makes miracles. I do not bind myself to you except in a pact, an alliance. You will tell me I am yours, now and forever. You will write with your own blood, you will put your imperfect soul into these drops of blood and you will wait. Before accepting the pact I will watch you closely. I will know if you have tried to sell me fake precious stones for sapphires, if the truth is in you, if your hope is your love and if all is truth, I will come to you. I will give you force in justice, love in charity, light in science. When you look for me, I will be near you, when you sleep I will watch over you, when you fight evil, I will be with you. Let not the intelligent disciple, a neophyte in magic, be blinded by the spirit of the century, the guardian of the threshold whirls his enchanted blade. He strikes you with a flash from his powerful eyes, but the disciple will pass if he knows how to keep silent, to will, and to love. Science is force, is justice, is charity. Science is not delirium, fever, passion, pride, ambition, lies. Lightning is an inexorable law, as is force in justice and as is charity. In this science the martyrs of the great ideals found their smile in the face of death, and their happiness in the world of priestly empires. Remember, my disciple, that you must be wise and must be able to read my words, because I have finished, and I am forbidden to tell you more because I have said too much, especially where you did not think I unveiled the arcanum of the magic of the great magicians as I had promised you. The true initiate is the one who, after constant labors and an efficacious practice of the doctrine, made perfect and evolved, surpasses the highest steps of the visible vulgar world and enters the world of causes, giving up the world of effects. It is the man who goes beyond the huge river of external sensations. Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 213 the 7th of September, 2019 9:40 AM 214 Epilogue and feels developing within himself the inner man, that is, the speaking Christ. It is the man who has separated himself, that is, he who has divided his high body, his first trinity, from the contemporary body and mentality, moving into the phase of evolution from where he can no longer recede, and speaking the double language of the spirit and the man. Since in every man there is, as it were, a double being, the ancient synthetic one of past lives and the modern new one, initiation must be understood as the return of the apparent man to the mysterious or arcane one. Initiation begins with the work the master does on the disciple so that the ancient man manifests in his integrity. Religions consist of spiritual education enveloping both the new and the ancient being in the same cloak of ideas, nourished by faith. Initiation, on the contrary, prevents the formation of new layers around the occult and arcane being and uncloaks him. The continuous action of taking away the artificial to unveil the ancient spirit in its integrity is a continuous death of the artificial self, without the support of a moral aid or encouragement. The novice must only instruct himself in science and aspire in silence to the manifestation of the God in himself without letting himself be seduced by the outer world. The Jehovah of the disciple must manifest himself directly and immediately. The disciple proceeds through the development of intuitions and his liberation from all artifices. He must not deprive himself of any desire to live, nor of any interest in earthly things, but he must aspire, 1. To the absolute mastery of life, as the creator of life itself. 2. To the possession of the state of holiness so that, according to the creative will that resides in him in the form of his highest solar principle, which itself is the prime virtue of the whole real Hermetic science of transformation. In 214 the 7th of September, 2019 9:40 AM Epilogue 215 Universe, he may make use of all material things, whether perceptible or not, considering them as his own production and not as goods that come to him or are donated by other hands, to make use of them according to the principle of absolute justice, the symbol of which is the scales of Michael. 3. To the possession of the state of mobility, so that all base things may be dominated. 4. To the reconquering of the luminous state, so that all roads, all principalities may be enlightened by truth, and so that he may always be conscious of himself, an active dominator, the creator and recreator of things. Magic with its operations expects only one phenomenon, one great phenomenon, that the sun rise, that the great god of mental light appears in the east of the sleeping psyche of the disciple, and that the day comes in the soul of the one who invokes it. Now, those who want to study and practice magic must not forget that the knowledge of the inner self constitutes the first part of the intelligent and conscious manifestation of the disciple, after which one comes into relation with the world of causes, consciously and not by blind faith. In magic, as soon as the theoretical rudiments are learned, one must operate. To discuss is a waste of time. The disciple must work, pray, practice. The practices of magic given by a master consistently have the following form: create, toil, experiment, and take no momentary notice of the psychical or soul work, which the operator takes no notice of simply because he does not immediately see what his operations produce, but the friendly hand he has invoked will begin, latently, to dispel the darkness and, unseen, insensibly, the labor of reintegration in the beatifying light will not be interrupted till the day of the complete triumph of the intellect of truth in him. Only one phenomenon must you ask and expect of our doctrine, Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 215 the 7th of September, 2019 9:40 AM 216 Epilogue, the reintegration of your intelligent self, that your spirit be enlightened and may find the light and, in light, the master. Once this unique and great phenomenon has happened, all the others are child's play. One knows what they are, and it will not be worth risking drunkenness. With this I have finished. I think I have written enough, that is, what suffices and is necessary to men of good will to achieve their aims. Hail, O disciple, I greet you. Remember the clamor and necesses of Isaiah. The time is propitious. Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 216 the 7th of September, 2019 9:40 AM Index. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. 217 Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 217 the 7th of September 2019 9:40 AM 218 Index. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 218 this is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index sub-entry text. This is a sample of the index main entry text. The 7th of September 2019 9:40 Index 219 Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 219 the 7th of September 2019 9:40 AM 220 Index Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 220 the 7th of September 2019 9:40 AM Index 221 Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 221 the 7th of September 2019 9:40 AM 222 Index Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 222 the 7th of September 2019 9:40 AM Index 223 Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 223 the 7th of September 2019 9:40 AM 224 Index Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 224 the 7th of September 2019 9:40 AM Books of Related Interest Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 225 the 7th of September 2019 9:40 AM Hermetic Science of Transformation. In 226 the 7th of September 2019 9:40 AM. Uncorrected page. Proofs not for resale. The Hermetic Science of Transformation, the Initiatic Path of Natural and Divine Magic. Giuliano Kremmerz. A classic initiatic primer for the serious magical aspirant, available now for the first time in English. Details occult purification and preparations for the path of natural and divine magic. Explains how initiation into the Hermetic science transforms the novice not only mentally but also physically, altering even the very fluids of the body. Offers a return to the original Hermetic path of initiation, following the strict procedures and symbolism as defined in the spiritual practices of Pythagoras and his tradition. The main purpose of the Hermetic science, as seen by Giuliano Kremmerz, 1861-1930, Italian alchemist, hermeticist, philosopher, and member of the Your group, is to allow the adept to concentrate on the natural and divine magic that will allow him or her to develop the latent powers innate in every human being. The initiator a path this opens, one the author compares to the royal way of alchemy, transforms the novice not only mentally but also physically, altering even the very fluids of his or her body. For Kremmerz, magic is the supreme science, the highest expression of what exists and what is possible. With this book, first published in Italian in 1897 and available here for the first time in English, Kremmerz sought to redefine magical initiation as well as other key components of the occult sciences. His aim was to bring the Hermetic path of initiation back into alignment with the strict procedures and symbolism that defined the spiritual practices of Pythagoras and the heirs to his tradition. He visualized the initiate as a disciple who has escaped the stagnant water in which the rest of humanity is immersed and entered a state of non-ordinary consciousness, one that allows for the successful pursuit of realization and contact with the magical will. In this transformative initiator guide, Kremmerz details the occult purification and preparation the path of natural and divine magic requires. The spiritual course advocated by Kremmerz is arduous, to move forward on the path of true realization, one that will allow the initiate to climb to heaven while still alive. The aspirant must commit to total severance from everyday life. Yet Kremmerz's words themselves serve to trigger the beginning of transformation within us, making the very act of reading this primer the first step on the path of initiation into the Hermetic science. Giuliano M. Kremmerz, 1861-1930, also known as J. M. Kremmerz and born as Ciro Formicino, was an Italian alchemist, hermeticist, philosopher, and prominent member of the Your group, alongside Julius Evola. He was initiated into the mysteries of the sacred science by Pasquale de Service, known as Isa, and published writings on natural and divine magic through the journal Il Mondo Secreto. In 1896 he founded the Schola Philosophica Hermetica Classica Italica and its associated body Fratellanza Therapeutica Magica di Miriam, Therapeutic and Magic Brotherhood of Miriam, a school and group still in operation in Italy today. Inner Traditions ISBN 978-1-62055-908-630, CAN $37.50, hardcover also available as an ebook 240 pages, 6x911 black and white illustrations. Rights, World English Occult /Esoteric November 2019 Hermetic Science of Transformation _marketing cover. Ind 1 7 September 2019 9:58 AM